magnum opus. Okay, so I'm just gonna spend just a few minutes on this because we do want to go into more. But certainly, he's on iPhone. I'm going to answer you, okay? Because I think this is somewhat interesting, but it's maybe too, a little bit off topic. But certainly, hang on in there. I'm just doing a little bit of the technical stuff here. There. And okay, so Fischel Schneerson, his father's, I think his name was Schneer Zalman, son of the Tzitzer Rebbe. And Fischel, as some, you could look him up, a very interesting person. He became a psychologist and actually wrote at least one or two books arguing with Freud, saying, whereas Freud says that the main impulse of the human is eros and libido, he saw that it's more has to do with will, has to do with other characteristics. He was downplaying the whole eros thanatos theory. He got John Dewey to write an intro to his book on the forget the title, psycho something character of the human, because I think Fischel came to America in the 1920s. So, but throughout his psychology career, he was always writing fiction. By the way, Fischel Schneerson wound up towards the end of his life becoming a child psychologist in Israel for children who survived the Holocaust and witnessed extreme traumas, and really helped and healed in that way. So he was certainly more secularized. He wasn't, I don't know how halachically observant he was, but he still maintained a connection with Chabad Lubavitch, like the sixth Lubavitch Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak. He attended some Farbrengens. There are different stories. I growing up in Lubavitch, I would hear from the Mashpim about him. So I'm also pointing out a certain. But that's already taking this conversation too far out. If you want, we could talk about that later. So yeah, as mentioned, his magnum opus was Chaim Gravitzer, which is a 4-volume epic of a Chassid, Chabad Chassid of the third Lubavitch Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, who has an extreme existential break. First, he has it sounds like he's almost bipolar. He has extreme ecstatic high, coming to the realization that nothing exists but God and divine, like a total acosmism, and in fact going around like a Pied Piper from shtetl to shtetl, drawing crowds, following him, just calling out like almost like the medieval type of stories. I think there's a little bit you could, and like the Ingrid Bergman Seventh Seal film, you could see it going ranting through the towns, and getting to the point of even that there's death and life are all one and the same towards God. What's the difference, etc. Then he finds out his only son died, and he rushes back to his hometown just in time for the funeral, and sees his son being buried, in the ground, being, laying there in shrouds and being covered, and he gives out a shriek, has a total existential breakdown, and runs off into the woods right near the cemetery and disappears. That's the end of volume 1. And then the next 3 volumes is this protagonist, Chaim Gravitzer, wandering through the Pale of Settlement. And he winds up in each volume he winds up more or less in a different major community. One volume he winds up with the Misnagdim. In another volume he winds up with the Maskilim, the Enlightenment. The other with the non-Chabad Chasidim, the Polish Chasidim, and it goes through his ups and downs throughout the travail, and then finally how he makes peace with himself and all that. So Fischel Schneerson was employing his deep, keen insight to the human condition as a psychologist in his fiction, and there are other many very fascinating books he wrote that way. So that's not even about who we're talking about. So his brother was Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was the one who was a rabbiner mitam, if I recall, of Chernigov, if I recall, which is in the news these days, if you're following what's going on in the Ukraine. Now, the competing, okay, I see what you're saying that's being sold on a nash. What happened is the Lubavitchers made their own version. They printed their own version of Chaim Gravitzer, which was originally written, the first 2 volumes in Yiddish. Volumes 3 and 4, it seems like it was originally serialized in Israel in a periodical. And it was only, and I was actually trying to track down the rest of it in the original Yiddish. It was tracked down by someone else. It's in certain archives. And so the actual volume 3 and 4 were never published in the original Yiddish. I think it's still there, but be it as it may, it was redone first in its full version, reprinted. We would get it as bootleg copies from the 1955 print. They were selling it in the farm store. You had to go, yeah, I got it. Then like, it's Shalom and pull it out. Okay, that's it. But then something like, I think within the last 10 years, an Israeli academic, Landerberg, I think his name is, got permission from the family to reprint the whole thing into one big fatty volume in Hebrew. Because again, even the 1955 edition was already done all in Hebrew. So he reprinted it and added context and all that. So that's an unadulterated version. But then, like 2-3 years ago, oh shucks, I just saw it at my parents' house earlier today, but I didn't even bother to bring it. But they made their own edited, should I call it, I'd say more harsher, their own censored version of it. I have no better way to put it. They took out entire pages and even the whole prologue. Chop job, man. I mean, there's certain benefits. They added some footnotes of certain research stuff, but basically they sterilized it for whatever reason. I mean, we know why. And so there is a Lubavitch version of it, and it's called, they renamed it Gilgulei Shel Chassid, the reincarnation or the travails of a Chassid. So that is the one you must probably see on inash.org. I'm just replying to your chat message. Okay, so his brother Yitzchak again, he right. So he was a rabbi. He was actually competing. The more traditional rabbi of Chernigov was a Lubavitch Rabbi Mendel Chaim, his name was, the son of David Tzvi Chaim, the Radatz. And Mendel Chaim, even though he was young, he was an amazing, great Torah scholar and also a polyglot, apparently. He was able to speak Russian well and other languages. So he was also, so there was, even though there was competition there, but the real competition Yitzhak Schneerson had was with the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Chabad Rebbe Shalom Ber, when there were these meetings in Petersburg in the capital, or maybe it was Moscow, I think it was St. Petersburg, about modernizing the rabbinate and I think the Jewish educational system in Tsarist Russia, in the Russian Empire. So Yitzhak Schneerson, as a modern rabbi, was going more for the Russian, or the way the Russian government wanted to modernize, whereas the Rebbe Shalom Ber was there fiercely fighting it with other rabbis too, like Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik and others. But the number one main antagonist to the reforms that the Russian government wanted to make was the Rashab Shalom Ber, 5th Chabad Rebbe. And it's known, and in fact, in his book, which is written in Yiddish, which is it's called My Struggle for Judaism in Tsarist Russia, 1903 to 1917. I forget the exact years. In there, he has a bunch of a good chapter or two, a bunch of pages, giving his point of view of how he was in this quarrel with his cousin Shalom Ber, and how it also hit the local newspapers. You have that cousins are fighting about on these issues. Okay, so earlier in this memoir, he describes, Yitzchak Schneerson describes how he started going from being like almost like they say a Rebbe Shekin, the Rebbe She'enikol, the son, grandchild of a Rebbe, including already as a teenager, he's starting to make his own Teiris and drashas, Chasidis, speaking to elders in the community, and everyone's like swallowing up every word he's saying. Yet how in his late teens, he became like a closet apikoros. He still went along. I think this started right before he got married, but went along with the who did he marry? He married a granddaughter of the Harner Steipler Rebbe, which was from the Tzans. So it's a mix of Tzans and Chernobyl. So in his memoir, he brings down that his elderly grandmother, the Harner Steipler Rebbetzin, because I think the Harner Steipler Rebbe at that point wasn't alive, she was bemoaning this shidduch, because she was saying, oh, these Chabadniks, they're like Litvaks, and the term for Litvaks is Litvak Tselem Cup, that the Lithuanians are like more philosophical and therefore are suspect to not be 100% full of Amunah, faith, and could be and could lead to apocrypha. And she wasn't incorrect. You know what I mean? So she was already calling him a Litvak Tselem Cup. And he describes at one point that she starts wailing, "Oy, what's going to be with the shidduch? It's going to be like with when Achad Ha'am married into the family. That only after he married into the dynasty, we found out that he's a really apikoros." And guess what happened? The same thing happened to Yitzchak Schneerson. And he says, like, even within the year of his marriage, he already was was very immersed in secular and modern literature, and wasn't following the whole Hasidic way. But it sounds like his marriage did last longer. I'm just mentioning this because you were asking if Achad Ha'am is related. So I'm just showing you, in a way, yes, but quite distant, because it's not directly that Achad Ha'am was from Lubavitch or in Lubavitch, unless maybe it came from a Chabad family. I'm not 100% clear. Adam's family. I never heard really that Asher Ginsburg, which was his real name, came from. But he's married into the Rebbe dynasty, which has connections to the Chabad indirectly. You know who claimed he was a descendant, a relative of Achad Ha'am? And I heard this from him. It's Allen Ginsburg. Allen Ginsburg said that that Asher Ginsburg is, I don't know if a direct great grandfather or something, but maybe great uncle or something to that effect. That basically the last name Ginsburg that he carries is this from the same Ginsburg family. So there you are. And the name Achad Ha'am came up recently. We had a seminar on people who've evolved from their.
Are you familiar with some kind of historic anecdote where the Rashab meeting him, and he said, I'm trying to, what is it, the phraseology, Makir as Baranov and Mechavin Levi. This guy, the Rashab, knows all the wisdom, and he's Mechavin. You've heard that?
Yeah, I did hear that vaguely. Yeah, I do. I don't recall the exact circumstance or context, but there is something, right? This is a similar vart that apparently I think Itche Masmid said it out of Fabrengen also, in front of the Friedrich Rebbe also, meaning Yedeyas ha'olam u'mechavin limrit by. Not Yedeyas Rebbeinu, not that he knows his creator and intentionally is rebelling against it, which is the classical phrase for an apikoros, for apostate, more than even heretic, but flips the phrase to say Yedeyas ha'olam, and that the Rebbe Shab knew well about the world and yet is intentionally rebelling against worldly ways. Good. So thank you for that. I forgot about that part. Very good. this is somehow we could use this in a way to segue into what we're doing tonight here. Welcome everyone out there. If you're following out in Facebook land, and you're more than invited to come into the Zoom intimacy here, and we can zoom away. By the way, Achad Ha'am, his most famous essay is Shiltonai Sasechel, where he's giving very prominence to the mind, and more specifically to reason. He's being a bit almost like a post Maimonidean, right? If you would see Moses Mendelssohn as a post Maimonidean, so he would be post of.
If in fact he interprets Rambam as something that necessarily said that if it came to be that anything in religion conflicted with reason, he'd throw it out, which is not true. The Rambam,
Right.
Whatever.
That's why I'm calling him post.
Right.
So and that again plugging into now Shavuos, the Moses day. So as you say, Moshe ad Moshe lakom Moshe. So you can say Moshe Madwish Telachad Ha'am. The one of the people. We're all individuals. The people. So here's what we're going to do for tonight. Well, first of all, again, welcome. So being that we are within 24 hours of the great holiday of Shavuot, which is traditionally the day. So there are three main factors here with Shavuot. One is it's the day 50 of after counting the Omer, which Sirat Omer, which began the day after first day of Pesach. That's factor number one, right? That's in the Bible. Factor number two in the Chumash in the Bible is the day of bringing the first fruits offering to the Beis Hamikdash. It's also related to the day of bringing also special loaves of bread as offerings. Plug to my brother-in-law who makes the best sourdough in Brooklyn, and I got my 2 loaves already. So, but it seems like he's almost sold out already for Shavuos. So just order earlier. Crust bread, yay! All right. And yet, what we really celebrate the most out of it all is what's not even explicit in the Torah, which is that Shavuos is the day of receiving the 10 Commandments, the Torah on Mount Sinai, right? The whole Matan Torah receiving the Torah. So what was so, and especially being that we don't have a Parsha reading for this week. So what we are going to do is we're going to focus on all about Torah, about Shavuos, about what it means in our lives, and we'll also with Torah about Torah, discussion about Torah, songs about Torah, and even stories about Torah. We're gonna over. I don't want to use the wrong words over here, over D, but whatever you want to call it, like just be full of Torah. And then also to plug it in, time permitting, with our our larger theme that we've been doing lately, the last few months, of the Chasidim, Misnagdim controversy, or even what we've been delving more specifically lately, the Hasidic perspective to things like alien or foreign thoughts, and its other side, which is the positive, how to have kavana, things like that. And which is connected with Torah, certainly, as we'll see. So just to warm us up, I'm feeling like I'll just share. How about I share a song, a beautiful niggin that recently, I sang years ago, but then I just remembered it more recently, sang it with friends. So, because as we know, as we were speaking earlier before we came online, that Matan Torah, the day receiving the Torah, is seen as the wedding day of God and the Jewish people. As the very last Mishnah in the tractate Kindness, and the Mishnah, it's not even the Gemara, Talmud, said on the pasuk, on the verse from Shir Shirim, from Song of Songs, right? Zayeno Rana Benois Sion, go out and see, but on the crown or the tiara that of King Shlomo, that is Mother B'yom Chasanasai, on his wedding day, B'yom Simchas Liba, the day of the joy of his heart. That B'yom Chasanasai, the day of his wedding day, that is Matan Torah, and the crown is, we see that as the Torah itself, or the honor of given to the Jewish people for willing or for receiving the Torah. As you know, there's the famous medrash, the different versions to it, basically of that there was representatives of the kingdom of the king who gifted their sovereign, the king, with 3 crowns. So the medrash says the king took 2 of the crowns and gave it to his children, the princes, and kept 1 for himself. Okay. So and what are the 2 crowns that he gave to his children? The children are Israel, and king is obviously God. Who are the reps of the kingdom? Those are the angels. And that's what they say, the 3 Kaddish that the angels say represents the 3 crowns. So the 2 crowns they gave to the people, one represents the famous Naaseh, that the people said we will do. The second crown for saying Venishma, and we will also listen, meaning that Nasa means that they agree to do even before they understand why. Only then did they say Nishma. Okay, now we understand. And that is the 3rd crown, as we explained in Chassidus. The 3rd crown that the king holds for himself, really, that too he gives to the people. Not for what? For the specifically willing to the people, the Jewish people said Nasa v'Nishma. First, they preceded Nasa before Nishma. That we will do before we even understand. Incidentally, when did they say Nasa v'Nishma? They said earlier, like from, I think it was day 2 or 3, from when they came to Mount Sinai, which was Rosh Chodesh. So they already said earlier, Nasa will do. But when did they say Nasa v'Nishma? Was tonight, this day, Erev Shavuot. Hey, Sivan. So it's very appropriate. We'll discuss this. And incidentally, what we were reading last week about on the Hasidic take on, if you remember, about alien, if disturbances during prayer and all that. Hopefully we'll have time later to continue reading. He discusses specifically this idea of Nasa v'Nishma. Okay. So it's brought down in Chassidus, in fact, that even the crown that God keeps for himself, that too he gives to the people. But he gives to us in a way that it is as if he's giving his atzma, his very essence to us. Because this idea of accepting without reason is the highest of the high. It shows that we really that we were willing to follow even without understanding, and as they say, do and ask questions later, right? The term. You know, there's that famous Yontav Erlich long Yiddish song based on the Medrash too, of how God brought the Torah to all the different nations of the world, and he makes it in like France and Europe, and France and England and Russia, and each one with their thing, and then and then it's always repeating, nein, nein, halt es allein, mir haben einander, nein, halt ich wenn so that's the whole thing. And then he comes to the Jewish people, and they say, oh, we don't need to know what says in it, right? Because in this version it's like what they ask, like the Russians ask, like, what does it say in the Torah? Let's say. I mean, the Medrash says, I forget who was it. I think it was Rum. Bnei Esav, the children of Esav. What does it say? It says, Lo yisirza, do not murder. He says, we can't live without murder. We have wars to fight, you know. We got to take care of business. So so they all turned it down because they weren't willing to accept the Torah without first knowing what's in it. Whereas the Jewish people were willing to take it with no questions asked, right? So that is the Nasa V'Nishma, right? And for that we received God's very own crown. It's also partake. We partake. It was also for us. Incidentally, if the great thing is just to follow orders, no questions asked, so why did they say Nishma? They already said earlier Nasa. So why Dafka now? They say Nishma. Because the answer is, it's when we say full faith and accept without even understanding, doesn't mean to remain in a state of not understanding. It means rather that the first move, the core is faith, is beyond reason. However, true faith is such that it manifests and is really it absorbs in all faculties of the human, including into reason. That it's not blind faith. It's not just being irrational beings. We are humans with faculties of thought and mind and even logic. So we and our faith is supposed to take over our totality, including our our left-brained part, left hemisphere, the brain part, all of that. So don't give, and therefore, in fact, there's the different types of mitzvot. There are those that have more explanation to them than others. There's a whole corpus of in Judaic literature called Taimei mitzvahs, the reasons of the mitzvah, which in fact we're encouraged to read. Why the reason for this and reason for that, right? But it's not just because of the reason why we're doing it, right? And that's a little bit like Maimonides with Guide for the Perplexed. That's what he was dealing with. He was dealing with people that were looking to have rash reason and philosophy to be the driving force for their faith, and that's a bit of a trap, because faith by definition is not contingent on mere logic, right? So Maimonides in his own way was trying to use the language of philosophy to get beyond this philosophical limitations, and trying to prove, ironically, through philosophy that there's greater than philosophy, and then to explain it within philosophy when you can, as much as possible. Okay, and right, Sadigon too, 100%, as Mr. iPhone. Maimonides A is most known for this, even though Sadigon was earlier, and also because with the Rambam Maimonides, he has the whole Mishnah Torah, which if you open it up, seems like it's primarily just about, starts off, you say this, and it's all very faith, or even, yeah. But even there, it's working on logical propositions in the metaphysics, right? Okay, so yes,
relevant to the topic. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't want to do too much. Okay, so to me, I think there seems to be a tension between, outside of what you just explained, between what Rambam and the earlier scholastic thinkers in Judaism, Laikrim, if you will, and let's say what Chassidus says. So if you're familiar in the 8 chapters, he also seems to say that he kind of sort of looks down or on people who say that um, on people who say that you that let's say you need, let's say, a Torah to tell a person not to kill, not to steal, not to do that, right? He says
Right.
you people are soul defective. People who would otherwise, and he goes into, would you say that that's in contradiction to later thought or what we have? Because I've heard my uncle explained to me that even the mishpat, not just the mishpatim, but just the chukim, but whichever ones that you could explain, should all be done, like in the sense of like because God said it, and not because you understand
Right.
it. So is there a tension there, or is that just my?
You're onto something, and there's a reason why for centuries scholars have debated who's the real Rambam, and because there does seem to be areas where, like, such that seems like he's depending more on human reason than predication of Torah. And then other places he's a very absolutist of Torah. So you could, I mean, the way scholars, at least academic scholars, like speaking about it is like sort of using the golden mean or the noble lies, or even that knowing your audience, and that way you answer ways that will be most persuasive and receptive for that given people. I don't know if that fully satisfies to explain it, because we think of like the human of faith or of a religion as being like steadfast and not wishy-washy. Come on, is it which one is it? Is it Athens or Jerusalem? Like, can't be one and the other, I would say like this, however, in somewhat defense of this, and this is where maybe just classical reading of the Rambam would diverge with the Hasidic reading of it, and that is that the Rambam would be saying, in Maimonides, that wherever there is reason involved, that is enough, regardless of if Torah, regardless if Torah hold you to or not, because there's a lot of things Torah don't say. Yet we know that there are certain rational / ethical reasons to follow a certain way, right? I'll give you that. My one of my teachers when I was younger would tell us, just because it doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch not to hold a cat in your hands or while you're davening doesn't mean you could hold a cat in your lap. I mean, that's exaggerated form. Like, just because it's not spelled out totally in Torah, specifically certain things are common sense or make reason are have a certain rational. No offense to all cat lovers and all those that daven with cats in their laps. It's been known to happen. And of course, if the cat, if you know, is a Gilgul from a holy Rebbe or whoever, this is the same teacher who incidentally also told us the story of, like, he was trying to explain, because it says in the end of the Gemara, oh, this is a good one, because there's a tradition to learn the tractate of Masechta Saita, the 49 days of Sfirta Omer. And this is what we're going to, so the last mission, the end of Saita, speaks about the signs of when Mashiach is coming. And there's a text, number one is chutzpah yazka, that there's going to be a lot of insolence and other different things, right? So we would say, oh, We could be chitzafin, we could be insolent because what do you want? It's the sign of the Mashiach is coming. We'll be more chuspedik. We'll make a ruckus in class and all that. Why not? One of the signs. So he would tell us, you don't get it. It's a sign isn't the cause. A sign is the effect. He says, so the metaphor he gave was that in the farm, back in the farm days, in the Pale of Settlement, a farmer, how did you know if it was going to rain? Because the cat would go and sense the moisture in the air and would run to go under the stove or whatever furnace, right, to get near the furnace. So then the farmer knew, oh, it's going to rain, in an hour or two. So once there was a great drought and it wasn't raining for a long time. So the farmer, what did he do in desperation? He took his cat and started pushing it under the furnace, to hoping that will make it rain. Okay. So that was his analogy too, just connecting with cat metaphors. Okay. So again, sorry, Jonathan, it's just too this. All right. So back to the Rambam. So yes. So of course there is reason, faculties in the Maimonidean models independent of Torah in a way. I mean, look, it makes sense because there are all those that are not Jewish that are very rational, very intellectual. From, if you want, from Plato to Kant to Wittgenstein, that had nothing to do with Judaism yet, and they were even following. They were following even great part of philosophy is ethics, Nicomachean ethics, other ethics, whatever. So even of like what, as Aristotle calls it, applied philosophy or political philosophy, right? How to live one's life. So there's certainly validity to that, and that's also Rambam's project. How do we fit that in with that? So certainly there is a way that we could be ethical as much as possible without Torah. Yet for the Jewish people, there is the Torah truth, which again Rambam would tell us is dependent on something supernatural. As much as he tries to explain away a lot of supernaturalism within Torah, but at some point he does get to that there is something transcendent going on here, something which, as much as he says that everything of truth has to be rational, logical, yet it could, part of the built into that rational scheme is to a gateway or rather a portal to an irrational state, which is, or let's call it the inexplicable. Okay, I'll give you a straight example. The fact that we are limited sentient beings. So you could tell anyone now, they'll agree. As much as we can figure out and know, there still is so much more that we don't know, right? We see throughout the evolution of human knowledge. So as much as now in 2023 we know, we also know that in 20, 30 years, they're going to discover so much more that we don't know yet. So, okay, when we get there, we'll call it rational and whatever, or whatever form of human knowledge. But already there is the inexplicable, ineffable that is beyond our limited human rational reach. So by extension, we could say, in this again, just taking a philosophical approach, that Torah is tapping into that which is beyond our limited understandings, faculties, even. And we could even say that it's tapping into something infinite, being that God is by definition infinite, and the Torah is certainly the conduit and the form of communication of the infinite to us. So there is already something. Even the Rambam on a purely philosophical level will admit that there's something there going on. And we do see, even in God for the Perplexed, here and there, he will say, for example, with prophecy and other places, that there is a place that we say we cannot understand. It's ineffable. It's experiential or even revelatory, right? Rambam totally agrees. It actually defends revelation of Mount Sinai. It's not just an allegory. It's not just a fantasy, an illusion, but there was a real experience of revelation. And by definition, that means that the infinite communicated with finite beings that were there at Mount Sinai. So voila, there it is. So that is even the rational Maimonidean scheme. The more traditional and specifically Hasidic way would say that everything is part of the Torah. It's Torah first, and then everything that extends from there. That means it's not that we're working from the limited, from the rational out up to the irrational, but rather we're starting with the irrational on top, and then it sort of percolates down into the rational. The analogy that they give in the early Chabad Chassidus, they say is that the difference of the Rambam and authentic, or actually they would say it, I think, I forget who is who, if it's the Aristotle versus Maimonides Rambam, or the Rambam versus the more traditional was there first a bullseye on the wall, and then you shot, and then for the truth you shoot into the center? Or do you shoot into the center for the truth, and then you draw the bullseye and the circles around it? Okay, so there you are.
Interesting.
So this is what we're saying here with Nasa v'Nishma, which is this is the day of Nasa v'Nishma, that there is something that the Hasidic interpretation of it certainly is that the predication of it all is the super rational, is without understanding, just doing because we're doing, because now what is drawing us to just do? That's our essence in us, right? The soul, and then there's all other explanations for that. And then follows that the rational. And again, that's the chiddush of today over a few days ago when they also said we'll do, is because now we're saying not just we'll do, but we're going to take that state, that starting point of the irrational, and that is going to lead us all the way through every core of our being, even into the rational faculties that we have. Which is why it's explained in Chassidus, even those laws which we call mishpatim, which seemingly, again, we've said before, have reasons, yet they too are because it's not because of the reasons per se. The reasons are almost just to allow us to make some sense out of it. But even when we know the reasons, we're almost like, oh, thank you, Hashem, for giving us this way that we could also understand it. But not that is the reason. By the way, just one more subtlety. If you look in the Rambam in Maimonides, when he explains in Guide for the Perplexed, Volume 3, he explains the various different mitzvah. If you read it carefully, you say, I think most of the times he doesn't say this is the reason of the mitzvah. He rather says this is to'elas ha-mitzvah, the benefit of the mitzvah. Like the Rambam is even avoiding giving a full reason for it, but rather he's saying that the reason, no pun intended, the general reason why we are given mitzvah is for our personal benefit. So, and now he's pointing out what are the beneficial aspects. That in itself leads to the reason for it. But it's not just for the reason, it's for rationality, but to bring an enhancement to our life, to make a connection between us and the divine. Like the very definition of the word, one of the definitions of the word mitzvah means tzaf, making a connective line. fusion, even with the divine, and that is what's accomplished in with Matan Torah. And it's not just the irrational, super rational, okay? But it's coming down all the way to rational, which is why in Exodus, Shemot, right after the whole amazing psychedelic Matan Torah, synesthetic, hearing sounds, seeing sounds and hearing visions and all that, right away is Parsha Mishpatim, very practical, down to earth instructions of even jurisprudence, which could be in any lahavdil, any any code out of any peoples, so to speak. Of course, with the Torah way. So the point is that's right. By the way, remember, like Chasidim didn't like reading. There's a famous Rosh Hashiva, Reb Shimon Shkop. So he made a distinction between Nitzotzot in one of his famous book on Talmudic Topol, his Chidushim innovations called Shari Yosher, and there he speaks about this difference that Mishpatim are the type of laws that really we would have our own reason to figure them out anyways, whereas Chukim and Edus are rather it's more because of divine reason, not just human reason. And I remember in the yeshiva, like we would like in the library version, there would be like comments outside. I would try to like bracket it. No, don't read this part. It's like not the Hasidic approach. And I heard a supposed hearsay of an old Lubavitch Chassid who started off in that yeshiva. He heard Rabbi Shimon Shkop say this in a shir or something to that effect. And as a chassid, he got food, and he said, and he blurted out, "But where do you hear the giver of the Torah? You're giving us teachings about Torah this, Torah that, and what is the difference mishpat? But where do we hear that it's all given by the Creator, by the giver of the Torah, by Hashem, the divine, even in the rational? That's the point. Okay, so that is what Nasav and Nishma is accomplishing tonight. So now, based on this, so if we were already so willing to surrender, even our reason, and we just willing, and we went and he took, and we just like had that bittul, as you call it, that we received, as we say, Kabbalah's El Malchut Shemayim, we accepted the yoke of heaven, and we're willing to follow God fully, even if we don't understand. If so, the shaila is, as you know, the Medrash Shosha says, Rashi brings it down, that right before God gave the Torah, what did God do? What did he do with Mount Sinai? New yeshiva, ex-yeshiva bachrim here, or even not?
He put it over their head like a beer, like a press.
Very
press.
Right. Kaf aleim har kegigis, as the term is. God picked up the whole holy mountain, hung it over the heads of the people, and said, accept the Torah. If you accept the Torah, fine. If not, I'm going to drop this over your heads, right? So, like, firstly, what's going on? Where's all the love and all that? He was just talking to the people. Secondly, they already accepted. They already said we're going to do it. And not only that, they showed that they're willing to do it without even understanding and willing. Or understanding, rather, and all that. So why this over their heads? Good, interesting iPhone in the chat comments. Does anyone has an idea why?
He wanted them to accept the Torah like a slave and not only like a son.
Very good. You're onto something. That's very certainly on the path of the answer. So the answer, what does it mean like a slave? Meaning, even when I decide, right, when I decide to surrender to something greater, higher, even if it's totally irrational, what's happening? It's still me. It's still my willpower. It's still my full volition. As you said, let's say the converse, right? Free human. You say, I am deciding to surrender. Okay, so it's still me in control of the situation. So even if the target the outcome is total obeisance, absolute subjugation, still it is, I've decided when to do it on my terms, almost, right? So as much as the bittul, that total self-surrender, negation, self-abnegation happens, it's still not 100% there. You get it? Because you're not. If you decide when you want to do the bittul, then is it really bittul? Nah. Even the bittul isn't fully bittul because it's my bittul. to put it best term. So therefore, it wasn't a scare tactic when God put it over. What the mountain over the people's head was to bring out in the people a deeper level of bittul, such bittul, the bittul of that they're not in control, full control. That even their bittul is batal. You hear? Even there's that is total giving themselves up to something greater than themselves, to the higher power. Even if they're on the same page of it, but they're giving up their it's not only they in other words, in the first case, it's their will to surrender. In the second case, with the mountain over their heads, they have no more will. And that way they surrender. So they even give up their will. You understand? And it's once you get to that very most existential core of total surrender, only then the essence can be communicated. And that is when the Torah was given by the essence of the divine of God, the Anochi, I am who I am. That thing. Okay, and to plug it in with what you're saying about slave is interesting, because halachically too, it says that if someone sells themselves, there is a case where you could sell. You have it in Pashmish, but you could sell yourself as a slave if you owe someone the person money and what have you. If you sell yourself to a slave, then you're not allowed to marry a shivcha knanit, a non-Jewish maid or female servant. However, if Bezdin sells you, that means you're sold. You're not in control of selling yourself, but the Bezdin sells you, then you can, because as long as you are still in the picture of having sold yourself, you haven't given up your former state of being somewhat of an independent being, and therefore meaning Jewish too, and therefore you're not allowed to marry the non-Jewish maiden. But when the Bezdin sells you as a slave, so then you had absolutely no autonomy, and therefore it's then it's fine. Okay. So that is, I'm just checking in. iPhone, is your hand up from earlier or is it more recent?
Yeah, I know it was more recent, but I think you've already diverged on a
All
different
right.
path. I don't want
Yeah.
to divert you.
And I think you bring chuk. I'm looking in the chat. Are those real chukim are beyond capacity to understand? And wondering, is there any correlation between edu chukim mishpat and the divine talent of chacham bin adat? I'm not sure. Good question. Could see, but I don't want to say anything without seeing it explicitly mentioned. Yeah, I would say more. Actually, it is brought down that chukim is above chachma. It goes to keter, to keser, which is above chachma, because that's where the pre-rational exists. Okay, and how it plugs into the other levels, I'm not sure, and maybe if I find any source, I'll let you know. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is all a way not only just to share what's going on for today, the special day of Nasa V'Nishma, but also to mention that this mountain over the people's head wasn't just a negative thing, but it was actually seen as the chuppah, the canopy, as we mentioned before, that the giving the Torah is the wedding day, or right. So that above is the chuppah. And I was just at a wedding yesterday of a relative, and I must say sometimes you see the bride and groom under the canopy of the chuppah, and sometimes it looks like at least they don't really want to be there, and not that they're not in love and not that, but there's just such. It's a very as beautiful as and happy and joy and in love that the couple, the soon to be newlyweds are. But it's a very serious time. It's probably the most important major milestone in their lives, and with everything that comes with it. So, there are chuppahs, especially until they break the glass. It could be quite serious and heavy. And it could be almost like the mountain over their heads in a way. And in a way, and again, it's not a scare tactic, it's not to bring up it, but it's to bring out the deepest aspect of total surrender. And that's what takes a real relationship to last, is to get to that core of selflessness, and then to rebuild in a way of building up together in a way of mutual self and ourselves, right? From me to we. It's just you just flip the M and over and it becomes a W, right? So that's the great wedding day. So in honor of this day of Nasa V'Nishma, and then I was just thinking there's a famous niggin, Marcham David sings it on one of his records. I'll sing that, and then there's another niggin I'd love to share. ויאמרו חולם בבריס יחד נעשה ונשמע ויאמרו כאחד ויאמרו חולם בבריס יחד נעשה ונשמע ויאמרו כאחד ויאמרו חולם בבריס יחד נעשה ונשמע ויאמרו כאחד ויאמרו חולם בבריס יחד נעשה ונשמע אנו כאחד, ואנו חולם בבריס יחד, נעשה ונשמע אנו כאחד, ואנו חולם בבריס יחד, נעשה ונשמע אנו כאחד. Right? So it's Nasa Mishnah, they said there's one. So, and actually the word Nasa and Nishma are almost the same. It's just the difference of a shin and a mem. I saw, let me see, I didn't read the whole Torah by one of the Ger Rebbes, actually his name Menachem, who passed, who's one of the more recent Ger Rebbes, the Ger Rebbe before the current one. He has a Torah on this, the difference of Nasa and Nishma. It's just the difference of a mem and a shin. I think those are the letters of shame. Let me. I don't want to say things unless I'm very 100% clear what they are. But he was just saying that it's very similar. And the shin and mem is the word shame, right? The name and shin. By the way, I don't know if you noticed this. If you take the name Moshe, you read it backwards, what does it say? What is the name Moshe backwards? Hey, Shin Mem is Hashem. Aha. So Hashem is in Moshe. That's why Moshe represents Hashem. You like that? Very simple one. All right. Yeah. I don't want to call it Mamash Chiddush. It's sort of just staring in our faces, but yeah.
Right.
And basically, I didn't see it anywhere. Put it that way. All right. So with that, and pointing out, being that, so yes, the theme of Matan Torah, as we mentioned, is the wedding, right? The wedding day. So and I there's a beautiful niggin. I'm sorry. Well, Nasa Nishma is also a difference of shin. I'm sorry. Yeah, mem and hey. So Oisi is mem ma. V'nachnu ma. So that's what he says. So that's the difference of the word nah, like nothing. And Moshe Rabbeinu says v'heim amcha v'nachlosecha. So the different the two letters that are different is actually not me. It was my mistake. Not mem and shin, but it's mem and hey. So that's the mah, the what, the nothingness. As we know, like that is the state of total like bittelness. Like we say chacham is koach mah, and again v'nachnu ma kislino za'am. And it's also ma is gematria adam 40, right? 45. And many other things. So there you are. Actually, I'm feeling like doing a little bit more than one niggin tonight. I don't know why. So the following niggin has like this sort of like almost what I feel like is like a real beautiful like chasana niggin. It's actually called the Mashiach niggin. It was made by the Strakip the Rebbe. Strakip is a branch from Tzanz, from the Shin of the Rebbe, from the Tzanz Rav. So it's a beautiful song, and I'll sing this, and then maybe one more song, okay? Na na da da ram, da 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 da. Da 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 da. Na da 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 ram. Na da da ram. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ba da 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 ba da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ram da 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 ma da 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 da. Ya Ram da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Yeah, da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ya da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ram ram da da ram da 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 ram. Ram da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ram Hari da 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 ma da 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 da. Do 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 do. Hari da 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 da. So there. It's called the Mashiach Nigun. Some call it the Shofar of Mashiach Nigun. From the Structive. All right. So so now with that, now that we've walked down the aisle, so to speak, and we're now, if you close your eyes and just feeling, internally visualizing how we're standing there at around the mountain covered with beautiful flowers and all the spectacle. So if you watch the movie of the Ten Commandments, there's a lot of old school Hollywood special effects put into it. But it's not about just that. There's deeper. It's about the revealing of the essence of the divine. As we know, that it's the first word of the Ten Commandments is Anochi. I am. I am. And as the Medrash says, it means Anochi Misha Anochi. I am who I am. There are those that say I am who I am, or I am that I am, is a definite translation of Ehya or Eka Asher in the beginning of Exodus, but that's not true. There it means I will be who I will be into the future tense. But the true I am who I am, or I am that I am, as Popeye says, I am that I am, that is really now in Anochi, that Anochi. Okay. Now this very word Anochi is very interesting. The very word of Anochi, I am, is not the word Ani, but it's Anochi. And it's brought down that Anochi is actually an Egyptian word. In fact, it sounds almost like an Egyptian word. Like if you know, there's an Egyptian artifact called the Ankh, and they spell it A-N-K-H, which is like this circle thing and something protruding. It was like used by the royalty as a symbol, maybe the symbol of the sun god. I'm not sure, whatever it may be. But I'm not saying that has anything to do with Anochi here. But Anochi is an Egyptian word. That's so it's brought down. So, well, we're going to bring up different questions here, and then we're going to try to unpack what's going on. So, firstly, if we're revealing of the Torah finally to the people, you'd think it would be Hebrew, it would be the holy language. Why an Egyptian word? Why actually the language that they were escaping from Egypt, right? Why are we using the Egyptian word for the most sacred moment, the very first, the Aleph, right? They say that, the whole Torah begins with a base, right? The Chachma Tivna Bayis, it says that with wisdom, God creates the house. This world is like the house, the edifice for the humans, and also to make the indwelling of the divine, like Mishkan, tabernacle, and Beis Hamikdash too. So, but it's also base. The whole world begins with a base. And in fact, there's great teachings. Why does the world begin with base? All that. But where does the Aleph begin? The Aleph is now. Why? Because the Aleph we know alphabetically precedes the base, because that's the whole purpose of creation, is for the Torah, giving the Torah. So in a way, the moment of Mount Sinai is the moment of bringing to fruition, fulfillment, the whole purpose of creation, for Torah to come to us. There was one descendant of the Lubavitch Rebbe, and he was always like in a state of like yira, like say fear and awe, divine fear and awe. So they would ask him, "What are you so afraid about? Why are you always in this fear state?" He says, "I'm afraid of the Aleph base." I said, "What do you mean afraid of the Aleph?" He said, "I'm afraid of Anochi and Bereishis Bara, God and the creation itself." But there we are. So true Aleph. But even the Aleph of the Ten Commandments could have been Ani. Why is it Dafka in Egyptian? Okay. We said before to visualize that we're around Mount Sinai now, encamped, as we know, in unity, ki ish echad b'lev echad. And if you know, Our custom is to stay up, right? The first night of Shavuos. Why? Well, great lamdanim out there. Why do we stay up the first night of Shavuos? Anyone remember? Maybe
So we can become even greater lamdanim.
Because what?
So that we become greater lamdanim. Because the Jews went into a faint or something.
Oh, close to that, right? Because they fell asleep the night before, right? I asked the question to make sure people don't fall asleep here. Anyway, that's a joke. So because actually what we'll do now is let's read a little medrash that describes what happened on the eve, the night before the giving of the Torah. Let me see if I have it open here. It is a medrash in Shir Shirim, okay? Because we always love to sneak in some text when we can. So here is this is the medrash. Pinchas, okay, reading, and we'll read here if you see on the screen. Pinchas says in the name of Yeshaya. So there's different things where the Medrash goes to earlier what the king does, meaning God first, or things like being in heaven, and then relates down here to earth. That the king was in heaven. It says here, Lamelech. So the metaphor of what happened Shavuos Eve is to a king. He lets it known, and he's coming for a special visit to a certain place in his kingdom. Lets the people know. Tuesday morning, I'm coming to visit Indianapolis, right? Okay. So you'd expect everyone to be up and stay up, right? But no. All the people, the people of the place were sleeping the whole night. When the king came, he saw them sleeping. He set up a like reveille call. He got all the trumpets and drums out and the shofars. And the governor, whoever of that province, came and blew away and got them to wake up to come face the entourage of the king. And then the king was able to go. So he got the princes to go and wake everyone up, so that when the king arrives to his palace, his local palace there, the people, the locals will be up already. So too, God preceded the people. It says that it was the third day from when the people separated, right? We are now in what is known as Shleishes Yimei Hagbal, the 3 days of separation, when we're sanctifying ourselves, making ourselves more holy, separating from impurities, from marital relations, and so on. In fact, it says, really, the Chumash says God said to do only 2 days, but Moshe added a third day. Be it as it may. Day 3, in the morning. Uksiv, it says that it was it was day 3 in the morning, and that is when the eastern wind blew, and that's when all this the noise started and all that. And this is despite the people knowing beforehand that God's going to come on day 3, because he informed them, but still they were asleep. So it says like this. So they went to sleep early, right? So they went to sleep and they overslept. They didn't set their alarm clocks or whatever it was. they were still sleeping when God came to them. Why did they fall asleep on the Shavuos Eve? Because the sleep of Atzeres would I mean, we say now Atzeres means Yom Tov, like Shavuos, but you could also say it's this period of the year is a sweet time to sleep. Early, late spring, early summer, Halayla Ketzara, and the night is short, right? In fact, like this is one of the shortest nights of the year, is this time of the year. So they were sleeping, so God himself had to wake them up. And then it continues, Amar Rabbi Yudan said, Afilu portana le'akatzbam, even like a flea or mosquito didn't sting them. Like everything was quiet that night. It was like so peaceful. They were able to sleep. There was no disturbance. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzan Yisheinin, God came and saw that people were sleeping. So he started to set up the trumpets to blow away. And that's why the verse says, it was day 3 in the morning. That's when all the noise and thunder and right was happening. In the beginning, even before the giving of the Torah. That was their wake up. That was their extreme alarm clock. And it was Moshe that actually woke the people up to come face God, King of all kings. Is what it says further in the verse. That Moshe brought the people out towards God. Then God walked before them, went before them, so to speak, till reaching Mount Sinai. Really it says that God descended. So it wasn't just a horizontal, it was like coming down. By Yed Hashem al Har Sinai determines, right? And that Har Sinai was full of smoke. That was like the like the smoke machines, the fog machines they have at times that blur out, and it's just for the special people to show up, and then like on the rock star stage, and then it clears, and then you see the performer, whoever it may be on stage, something like that. So this was the whole smoke screen thing. But it was because that was the way God, it says in general, God travels through smoke and clouds and what have you. So this was the entrance, the grand entrance of God. Let's do this, right? So in fact, it's interesting that you would expect the people to be waiting in anticipation. Now, why did they fall asleep? You could say in a way that maybe they just wanted to be well rested, for they knew there was a great day coming the next day to receive the Torah, so they fell asleep. But it still doesn't make sense, because why would they oversleep, overrest? If anything exciting is happening in your life, you're going to go on a major trip or something, you can't fall asleep, even if you want to. You just, even if you lay down, you're just a shpilkus. You're so full of the excitement and anticipation. So how could they even have been able to fall asleep? That's the question. Moreover, they worked so hard to get to this point, right? The 49 days of anticipation. It was like, as we explained in the past weeks, it's almost like from moment of engagement to the wedding day. Like how many brides and grooms actually sleep the full night before their wedding day, right? I doubt they get a full night's rest. They're on shpilkus in a way, right? And moreover, the people have worked on themselves through all the nights of Sfira, and hopefully tonight we're going to go through tonight is the very last night of Sfira, Malchut of Malchut, and we'll get to it soon, okay? And we'll do the count, the final count, the count up, as we've been saying. And especially Danny is here, so hopefully she'll be able to share too on the meaning of tonight's Sfira. So if they were working it out so much and worked, and they're at the last stage to the 50th, right? And that means that they've really, really transformed everything. And so how could they have been like so almost, I don't want to like so want to say crap. They're now in the most refined state. Their bodies should be in such a so transcendent condition that the body even wouldn't want to fall asleep, right? They've totally gotten rid of their animal selves at this point. So how could they just go and have a good night's sleep? Doesn't make any sense. Moreover, and like, what does it mean that their sleep was even sweet and the nights were short? Why does Medrash give these details? And moreover, there's it seemed like the fact that there were no mosquitoes biting them seems like that this was something by itself, like a mini miracle in a way. That means there was almost a bit of of God's endorsing this. So what's going on? Does anyone have any possible insight? Why would they fall asleep on this very night? I'll give you a hint.
Subconsciously, they didn't want to hear the message, maybe.
Well, I would say it the other way around, even that they were trying to attain a very high state. And this gets to the core of what the whole Matan Torah means. And with this, let's look at another medrash. And this is another famous medrash, and this is foundational to know what is Matan Torah, the giving Torah, really accomplishing. Because, Torah, we know, was already in the world before. We know there was the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, Avram, studied Torah, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Ishtam, Yeshiva, Holland, he was learning all Torah. And even the patriarchs and matriarchs kept the Torah, the mitzvahs and all that. So Torah existed before. So it wasn't just the material of Torah. Not only that, the 10 Commandments themselves, at least half of them, if not more, are just make common sense anyways. And even those other ones they were already told about before. Like Shabbos, they were already told before Matan Torah Mara. The idea of monotheism, the one God, and no idols was already something that was already in the air. We know Avraham Avinu that's what he was all about, Abraham, right? So what did Matan Torah, so we must say that the whole giving of the Torah and Mount Sinai wasn't just it wasn't just information, passing on information here. There was something deeper happening. Mount Torah was accomplishing something that did not happen ever in the world until that moment. What is it? So here we go. The following midrash will help illuminate us. So this is a medrash in Shmos, okay? So Amar David, let's go to the gist of it. David said, even though God decreed that Hashemayim Shamayim Hashem V'Haaretz Nasan Livnei Adam, that heaven is to God and humans are on earth. That means that everything that is divine, of spiritual content, let's call it, though as we'll see, that's a bit of a misnomer. That is all in heaven, right? We say God in heaven, that is as if we're saying God is only in heaven, almost, we say. And then on earth there are humans, right? So we see there's this bifurcation. There's almost this separation, that there's godly heaven and earthly humans, right? Okay, so that's the setup. Mashallah, David, what is this compared to what metaphor? Lamelech shegaz v'amar v'neiremi layeyadu l'Surya v'nei liyaltu v'yemi. The king who owned different territories. So you have Rome, right? Let's call that Italy, and then you have Syria. For if you look at a map, Italy, it seems like, or what a country above Syria is above it, and then you have Syria. Let's put it better. Say people of the mountains and people of the valleys, right? So the king says everyone stays in their place. People or going back to human evolution, Homo sapiens stay up in the mountaintops, and Neanderthals stay down in the valleys. All right. So so when God created the world, Gazar v'amar, he decreed and said, Hashemayim Shemayim Hashem of Nasa, and divine being, godly divinity is up in heaven, and earth is the place, the main for mortals, right? So that was the setup for the first 2,448 years of the world's existence. Then came the giving of Torah. When this happened, when God decided or wanted to give the Torah, then Bitel Gzeir, he nullified this decree. And he said, that those that are below can go up, and those that are above can descend down. Meaning he broke this partition, this separation, and says now things of heaven can come down to earth, and things of earth can elevate up to heaven. Moreover, Vaniya Mascho, God says, and I'm the first to start. I'll make the first move. Shenemer, as it says, Vayed Hashem al Sinai, that Hashem descended on Mount Sinai, and then in response to that, it says, Vel Moshe Amar Alei Elahar, and then God tells Moshe, ascend the mountain. So then, so this is going earlier on the verse. Everything God wants to do, he does in heavens and in earth, meaning the same God who partitioned heaven for heavenly or divine stuff only, and earth for earthly or human stuff. This very same God is, he made the law and he could break the law. And now he's mevatel b'gzeira. Gzeira also comes to the word to cut. He made the split, so now there's no more split. There's no more gap between heaven and earth. Now heaven descends to earth, and earth elevates to heaven. Okay, so this is it. So what does that mean? That means that until the giving of, yes, there was a Torah before, but the Torah before was still spiritualized fully, meaning it didn't fully come down to earth, didn't fully permeate the very earth, physicality of the earth, in even, let's call it, on a cellular level. It's yes, true, there were those that studied Torah down. Not only that, it says the avos, the patriarchs, kept followed the Torah. However, it's very interesting. It says that even if Abraham had been put on tefillin, or Yaakov, who did the streaks on the poles for his sheep, which they say represents tefillin, or whatever other mitzvahs they kept, as says that the others kept all the mitzvahs. But the object, the physical object that they used for the mitzvah did not remain holy. It was maybe holy while they were fulfilling, but once they took the tefillin off, put it away, it was just a piece of leather. It didn't have the spiritual, or rather the divine component, fully manifested permanently into the physicality. It was still this bifurcation of the divine from the physical, or I was going to say spiritual, but spiritual is not a good word, because spiritual by definition means that which is not physical. And that's the point, that when God revealed on Mount Sinai, he was saying, now we forget about this separation between the spiritual and physical. I am greater than all of that. I am the divine. Divine is beyond even the spiritual. Divine is the source of all. God, the essence of God is the source of all. and that God is so great, so high, that he can even come down to the most physical and lowest aspects of the world and be as divine in the physical as in the spiritual. Or as Chassidus explains, that in a way, the divine could be more present in the physical even than the spiritual. Okay? And that is what give me the Torah commandment says. As if earth went up and heaven came down, they meet there and they become one. And there, and that, so therefore that is the specialness and uniqueness of the giving of Torah, because and that's what's now with us till this day, that the object of the physical, tangible, most physical of physicality is endowed with the most sublime, supreme of divinity. And it remains that within, and this is something that we're accomplished now. And that's why also it explains several things. First, it explains again why the Torah began with an Egyptian word, to say that when we are tapping this point, when God is revealing the very essence of his being, this is the time when the most divine of all, the most sublime, can manifest even in the lowest of languages of Egyptian and remain holy and be holy. Okay. This explains why also the Torah brings down at least half of the Ten Commandments have to do with very practical and earthly bound things. Do not steal, do not murder, do not covet, and so on. Saying that that this Torah story, this Torah that we receive is not just a spiritual document, but it's a way of life in our very earthly ways, right? And with this insight, there are other aspects that are understood. We could explain too. It's we spoke about in the last couple of weeks the idea of three, right? Sivan is the third month, and that three brings unity more than right. That's if thesis, antithesis. The third is the synthesis that unifies, right? And in a way, the unity comes through three more than just by remaining one. And here we see it too. We have physical, that's it, and then we have spiritual, and they're contradictory. So in order to fuse them and express that they are really one and that they could be, right, they can be manifested as one, there is the third principle that comes, which is not even it's certainly greater, but it's part of the former two, and that is the essence of divinity, godliness itself. Okay, and that brings it all as one, and that's how Torah manifests in a way that we could really, even as humans, we could follow it. That is also why we say Anochi Hashem Yudke Vavke Elokecha. Those are the three aspects. Elokecha, your God, us humans down here. Elokim, right? That's the way God manifests in nature. Elokim is Gematria Hateva 86, as we know. That is the divine as manifested in that represents nature itself. Yudke Vavke, as we know, as we spoken about in the past, represents the supernatural, that which transcends the physical, what's called the spiritual, for lack of a better term, that which is beyond. Like it's brought down in Tanya and other places, that the sun itself is the Yudke Vavke, and then the shield or the filter to the sun, that to bring the infinite in a more physical manifested way, that is Elohim. Okay, But then there's greater than both of those, and that is Anochi, I am. Not only is it an Egyptian word, but it's beyond name. It's like, again, I am what I am. I, me, iPhone. That's it. I, just me. Right? There's nothing greater than that. You know, you call someone and you say, yeah, who's there? I am, like, that's the most core to the person. There's also the negative part of thinking too much of oneself as an I, and we'll get to that too. So this state is the essence of the divine. In fact, it's brought down, I think it's from the Zayar, that Anochi is an acronym for Ano Nafshi Kosvis Yehadus. That I, God says, I have written in the Torah my very being, my very soul, my very essence. That is the I of Anochi. And when we're in, so when the divine is in that state, then it all becomes one, and even the physical can absorb the spiritual and even beyond it, the very divinity itself. This also explains what, you know, the Gemara and Shabbos and the famous sugya part of the Gemara Shabbos, which speaks about the giving of the Torah, the whole debate between the angels and Moshe, right? The angels say, right, we should keep the Torah to us. Why are you giving it to humans? And Moshe says, what do you mean? What the Torah says, do not steal, do not notice physical things. You angels, you have possessions, you have food, you have parents, to honor your parents and things like that. So of course the Torah was made for humans. But there are those that say, but maybe the angels still said that they could be explained on a spiritual level, and that the angels' complaint was also, there's a halachic law of bar metzra, meaning that those that live closer to a certain area have first dibs, right? It's almost like eminent domain in a way, not exactly, but in the sense like if there's an empty lot next to my house, I have priority to buy that lot versus someone who's, let's say, lives far away or somewhere else, right? So that the angels, this is one of the commentaries say, the Shach, I think, that angel was saying the Torah is in heaven, and we live up here in heaven, so we have priority to have the Torah. Why are you giving it to the people, the humans, all the way down there? So what was Moshe's answer? All this stuff that about human affairs, about worldly affairs. So, but how does that answer the fact that they say they're priority? So the answer is, that's Moshe's point. And the Moshe's point is, it's that with the giving the Torah, the angels don't have because it's now the boundaries between heaven and earth have been erased. Now Torah belongs to heaven. So Torah belongs to us. Look at the Torah, what it talks about. I'm internet connection unstable. It just went off. Am I being heard? Am I breaking up on the here? Is everything?
You've begun to break up a little
Everyone
bit.
hears me?
Very slightly, yes.
What?
Yeah.
What about now?
Now we can hardly hear you.
Getting a little
Okay.
wavy.
Okay,
You're
I'm changing. Yeah, I'm changing modem. Okay, we're gonna make it better. We are. Yeah. Get between internet works.
Come on, I thought this only happens on Twitter. Baruch, you're on mute.
Okay, we're back. Okay, this should be better now. Okay, great. So now there's more points and more aspects to this point about why Dafka. That's the whole chiddush and greatness of Shavuos, Matan Torah, of bridging from the highest to the lowest. That we're all one now. So I think this would be a good place to segue for the actual sphira, okay? And then we could tap into that. Why? It's interesting because tonight is the very last night of counting. So on the one hand, we're going all the way up, like we said, into not counting up, because we've refined every part of us. And now we're on each night, the last 40 nights, we've been more and more spiritually elevated. But interesting, the locus and emphasis of what we've been refining, where we've been refining, ironically goes down. If you remember, and this plugs into what we've been learning in the past with the Hasidic materials. If we remember, for example, when we spoke about the foreign alien thoughts, where are they in the Sephirotic chain? We call it Malchus of Malchus, right? That is where the spark of Shechin is trapped in the Machshava Zar, in the alien thought, all the way down the line. That's what's right next to the Klippa, or even in the Klippat Noga, and like the very end of the line of the linkage all the way to the source. So Malchus of Malchus, which represents tonight, right? Sovereignty of sovereignty, however you want to translate it, is in a way at the very end of the line, the lowest. Yet, Dafke, by transforming the Malchus of Malchus, we finish being fully refined and being fully elevated. Because in both Kabbalah and Chassidus, this is a very central point, that only that which is the highest source or closest in the most divine state, most intensely divine, can have the deepest effect and even transformation on the farthest or lowest, right? Therefore, Dafka, it's from God's essence that, as we just said, could come down into the physical. Or Dafka, like say the tzaddik, who's the most refined, can have an effect on the lowest aspect. So that is what we're doing, that the last night before Shavuot, before we receive the Torah, is for us to refine our Malchus of Malchus, the very end of the line. And once we do that, then it's almost like, like they say, the very last part of any project is sometimes the hardest. So someone used earlier the term Sisyphean, right? There is something Sisyphean about it. The only difference is that hopefully it doesn't remain Sisyphean. We actually do it. We refine it. And that's tonight. So without further ado, let us get into Sephira mode. Sephira, again, as we were speaking about until now, Sephira not just means counting or telling, but also to shine, like sapphire. And we're getting to the point of finally finishing polishing every part of us. So, Aaron, if you're still around, available, if you want to, I do have, let me see if I have immediately accessible the Sephira to Omer page. If not, I could pull it up. Do you have it right there accessible? Yeah, all right. But let's just do it. All right. So I'm gonna find the open Siddur, then Siddur Sephira. Oh, yeah, okay. Here we go. And Danny, are you there? Are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, I have the page already. I opened it up. Thank you. Danny, are you there? Are you available? Are you able to lead us with Sephira? and then maybe also sharing what you feel, what tonight means, generally, or to you. And all right. So Danny, I think, is taking. Oh, okay. Let me say, I forgot the point before we get to the Sphira, the whole sleeping part, because it seems like maybe some people have dozed off. So again, back to the story of falling asleep and not being up for the Torah. That is the point. Oh, what is going on? The people thought, when we are refining 49 days of Sephira and we transformed and got rid of our animal soul, now we are the perfect height of spirituality. That means we are in a state of more soul than body. And that is precisely the state of sleep. When we put our bodies to sleep and our souls ascend and are most alert. In fact, there are places that explain that when there are people, I've seen this even in books and myself personally once in a while, and in the state of slumber, you could access profound ideas and teachings of Torah, because it's the body's asleep, but the soul is all the more awake, right? So that is what the people were saying. In fact, they weren't sleeping because they were tired, or even so they'll be more alert the next day. This was part of their process. After 49 days of counting the Omer, but now what is left? They have no more physicality to deal with. Now let us just go. Like it says that sleeping is like a 60th of death. What does that mean? Sleep means that we're getting rid of our bodies and letting the soul reconnect with the source. So that is what the people were saying. To prepare to receive the Torah, which is this greatest of highest spiritual transmission and experience, we have to spiritualize ourselves to the highest. No better way to do that than to sleep. So they forced themselves to sleep, even though they were most likely excited to get the Torah the next day. They said, no, let's sleep. And when we are in that high level, then that being in that spiritual level of sleep, then we could receive the Torah the next day. See? So it's a whole opposite concept. Not sleep was a flaw of theirs, but sleep they thought was like a conscious way of getting higher. And therefore they were saying, because the sleep of Atzeret is Areva is sweet. It wasn't that they're sleeping, because they were getting to the state of the holiday of Shavuot Atzeret to be sweet sleep, the sweet soul state of that means the soul being fully awake, more awake than the body, beyond the body, putting the body to sleep, right? So too it says the night was short, meaning they've already worked through their darkness for 49 days through Sphira, and now they're all ready to be on this great spiritual level. So that seems great. But guess what? God said, no, that's not the purpose of Torah. The purpose of Torah is not to become more and more and more spiritual. That was the pre-Torah state. That's what the patriarchs did and all that. Torah is dafka, as we said, to bring heaven down to earth, to bring the most sublime, whatever it is, godliness, even spirituality, into the physical, into our bodies, into our alertness. And therefore, the real preparation to receive Torah would be to be in their bodies and spiritual. Now, the Hasidic teaching is saying that the preparation to not to sleep is not to sleep. That was this way. So again, their intention, and in a way, they were right. Let's go there. This explains other things too, like we were speaking about in last week, in a couple of weeks, that Torah being given in a desert. It's beautiful to be given in a desert. Desert is also a very spiritualized place. There's no physical burdens or everything. But no, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to bring the Torah into the world. into the physical, to reach the Holy Land and work the land and all that. And as after we count Sphira, we will continue on this theme. Okay. So one more last call to Danny. If you're not too spiritualized, if you're alert and physical body enough to count with us the last night. If not, offering it to someone who maybe did not do the spirit count yet. Yassi, are you there? Is this something you would like to do?
I stopped counting with the bracha in the second night.
All right.
So yeah, preferably someone else. Yeah.
All right. Zisha, the holy brother Zisha, welcome. I forgot to welcome you.
Yeah,
You
thank you. I don't count with a bracha either.
Okay. So anyone else? Either it's okay. We're down to Aaron or Jonathan. Either of you would. Let's go. Please, someone volunteer. There's halacha that when it comes to someone to go to be a shliach tzibur, you're not supposed to take too much time with modesty.
Why don't you say it tonight? I don't think I've heard you say that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do it. I think it's the last night. Because I just like to share with others and have others to join in. But if no one else is stepping up to the plate, I'll do it. לשם ייחוד קודשי וייחוד שכינתה, בתחילו רחימו רחימו תחילו, ליחד לשם יודעי בבותי, ייחוד השלים בשם כל ישראל. הנני מוכן מזומן, נקיים ניצוצות של ספירת זין, נקשיב כל ספירת תורה, וספרתם לכם ממחרת השביעי שבועות, ממדיחוס וממעט תנופה, שבע שבות לפני מויסטיינו, אני מוחרת השבת השביעי, תספרו 50 יום, הקרבתם מנחה חדשה לאדוני. Eino avoyam, Adonai Eloheinu. Oh, 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 Umasei Odeinu, Painena Oleinu. Umasei Odeinu, Koineneyu, Binoya, Hashem Elokeinu. Oh, you know, Umasei Odeinu, Kainena Oleinu, Umasei Odeinu, Kainena Oleinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher shekinishanu v'nitzotzot v'tzivanu al sfiras ha'omer. Hayom Tisha v'arboim yom, Shem Shiva Shavuos lo yimeh. Yeah, let's finish it up. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu, Melech Yaviseinu. Jayabande Beis Hamikdash Meira V'Yameinu, Ten Chelkeinu B'Zeirosecha. Jayabande Beis Hamikdash Meira V'Yameinu, Ten Chelkeinu B'Zeirosecha. V'im chaneinu v'cheinu yipanav mitanu sem. T'asbar zarkecha v'chogayim shuvasecha. Tuchamim ohim yeduchamim kola. Zchuvanu mikisish b'damim mishai. Ulum mivares tarchem seloi. Tuchamim ohim yeduchamim kola. Es not yavo yv'cheinu ohim oleheinu. Yv'cheinu oleheim yv'aisai. Kolase yodres. Ay anna bekaya tulas yemincha tatzero bura kaberi nasamcha sagleinu tarein no no giboy shaykhutcha kevalas shamrein Bochein tarein nachamei tikascho tamid kamein Pasin kadosh v'noif tuvcho nahel adosecho Yochil yeyel yamcha b'nei Nifrei kudushasecho Tavoseinu kamer Masakoseinu Yoideya Talumois Iboy Neshaloimon Atsibisan Noile Meshvadecho Ismesusaime Telatareinu Mikuvaseinu Mikuvaseinu Mishmasatim Selasecho Usfatem Lochem Mimora Chalas HaShabos Yemati Acheles Eimerat Nufa Sheva Shabos Ismin Mistiyano Alimachas HaShabos Hashmiz Titzveru Chamiz Vim Yovoim Teshitanu Nashis Achnisam Mizumasa V'cheinu Tzim Nachanel Hinim Avitzenu V'bizchut Shesay Meshutvat Ayoy Yisukan Mashapagamti B'sfira Malchus Shebe Malchus King sovereignty of sovereignty, kingdom of kingdom, royalty of royalty. V'tayres talish bitusha shel maila v'ayedei zeh yishba shefadav v'chol imamnois u'lesakenes nasheseinu v'rucheseinu v'nishmaseinu kosiguvka u'tareinu kacheinu b'shoschav yena ometzeh So as you see the image, it's all Malchus tonight. No bullseye. It's all solid, brownish. What? Brownish.
Earthy.
Rims are earthy. Right. That's the Reb Zalman scheme. And the here, I think, lowers the Ramak one or something, or not. No, lowers Ramak. Here.
Keep on going.
Keep on going. Here we are. The bottom right, this right here is the blue or purpley Malchut blue, right? The Tcheles. All right, come on. By the way, the first time, one of the first times I met Jonathan was at a Kala gathering, and he told me, you know why everyone's running around here Shabbat wearing purple or blue? Because Argaman is the acronym for all the angels. For Ariel, Raphael, Gavriel, Michal, Nuriel. You remember telling me this, Jonathan?
Yes, but I can't believe you remember.
Okay. Well, then I knew we're on the same page. We're in the same dimension, right?
Yep.
Gewaldig. So happy we got that in. We made it to see him. Hoi, 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 עד כאן שבוע זין, עד כאן שבוע זין, עד כאן 7 weeks we This is like a hakafa, like we did the 7th hakafa here.
This was David HaMelech's Shavua,
Right. Right, because
Malchut.
Malchut, very good. So thank you very much for opening that up to David HaMelech. That's exactly where I wanted to head. Really, mamish, you're like great. We're in the, as mentioned, we're in the same dimension. So if I was to tell you Shavuos, that there's three main protagonists. I know we all are, right? All 600,000 millions of us. We're all achad ha'am. We're all the singular of the people. We're all, like it says, and all that. But if I was to tell you Shavuos, who is the most important person associated with Shavuos?
Rus.
I was going to say
Okay,
Ruth.
Rus is good. All right, before Rus even.
Oh, Rus was, well, all right, never mind.
No, what you're saying is totally right. I'm saying, think about, okay,
Naomi?
who very open, who received the Torah on Mount Sinai?
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Moshe.
Okay, so we got Moshe, number one, of course. There is no
That was
Mount
that
Torah.
was a
Moshe
trick
Kibbutz Torah
question.
Sinai. Right, a bit. But then you're saying number two is Rus, that's close. Who is Rus's descendant?
David HaMelech.
Parrots.
Right, Parrot, and who's after Parrot? Who said
His bro-
David?
his
Someone
I
brother.
said
said
David.
David HaMelech.
Right. So what is the connection of David and Shavuos?
David Ben Yishai.
Right. What's the connection? The Gemara. It's the Gemara. The Talmud says that David passed away on Shavuot.
Ah,
Ah.
yes.
Oh,
In fact, there was a whole debate what to do, because I think it was Shabbos also. And the whole issue was, how did they carry the body of David?
was David the one that had years deducted from his life or something? What was that name?
The 70 from Adam, right? For
Possibly.
David. 70, he lived 70 years, and Adam lived 930 years, right?
Uh-huh.
There you're right.
Yeah.
So very good, very good. I forgot about that. Yeah, very true. So David
But he
was
lived through the day of Malchut, Shiba Malchut.
that's true. Because he fully fulfilled it.
Right.
Very good. And so Gemara says, how did they carry the body? That the Shabbos, they put a piece of bread on it, so it wasn't muktzah, and they used it as the thing. And then other places say, as we know, it says that tzaddikim, their years are complete full cycles. So unless otherwise said, we usually tend to say that was also their birthday. So in a way, it was also his birthday. Which other famous person passed away is also, his yard side is on Shavuos?
Shem Tov.
Very
Uh-huh.
good. Baal Shem Tov. So in the year 1760, the Baal Shem Tov passed away. Which day of Shavuos, does anyone know?
Second.
Close. If it wasn't the
Close.
second, it was the
First.
The other one.
Third day.
Ring, first day. Very good. Actually, it was a debate. Not everyone agreed for a long time. Even though in the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov, the famous book of legends of the Baal Shem Tov, I'd love to read with you how he describes the passing of the Baal Shem Tov there. I think it's a fantastic read. It says here the first day, and there's some other sources say first day, but for some different reasons, people said maybe it was the second day Shavuos. There was a spiritual reason why, because halacha is if someone passed away the first day Yom Tov, to be buried in the second day. So, but a Jew cannot bury; it had to be a Gentile. How could it be a Gentile buried in the Shem Tov? But it seems like the fact is what happened was not too long ago, only a couple of decades ago. I remember when this happened. they finally published the colophon. A colophon is like an addendum to a book or manuscript. So there was there's the famous Siddur, the Baal Shem Tov, that's now in the Chabad library, which he used a lot. And there's here you could see it was well worn and blood, and he had the names of the students in it. Very fascinating document, and there's facsimiles of it you can find online. So they won't show it in person. It's very holy. You have to go to even many years ago, with the very few times they allowed people to see it, they had to go to the mikveh first. It was a whole process. They're never going to take it out and show, but they did make handily available copies of it. Beautiful color facsimile. That's the Baal Shem Tov. But apparently, it was because it was so worn. They were making a newer siddur for the Baal Shem Tov. What we mean a siddur for Baal Shem Tov also means to include certain basic kavanot of the Arizal. We spoke about a couple of weeks ago, even though the Baal Shem Tov, that Baal Shem Tov had a, I was going to say complicated relationship with Lurianic Kabbalah and Kavanot, but he, like we could say, is like we say in the beginning of the Chabad, al pi nusachari, meaning it's not mamish with all overloading the liturgy with Kavanot all over the place. I'm just thinking now, Aaron, open siddur, you could start putting all kavanot terufim all on the margins of the text. It's half a jest, but why not? So the Baal Shem Tov siddur did have some of the kavanot, meaning the major ones, but not in very big detail. So there was a siddur.
Sorry, but you talked about all the kavanot.
Yeah, the kavanot, like the different names, different letters and gematrias.
The one time I actually went to the Kabbalah Center,
right,
on Robertson and Pico. I opened their siddur, and it's thick like a hitas. Their siddur is thick, and it's got every prayer has kavanas. And everything has the Yud K Vav K, and everything has the Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, all interspersed. It's amazing. But I was used to the Ari Nusach, so it was a little foreign to me. But eventually, that's it. But that was the first time I had really ever seen what do you call it, kavanot?
Right.
In a siddur like that.
Right. So yes, that's a very good example. Now there's all different varieties of it. The most detailed and the most overloaded with kavanot is probably the Siddur Rashash, Reb Shalom Sharabi. And that's the one that we mentioned, the past. Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Morgenstern in Yerushalayim uses and others. And there you have to literally, let's say Shema, every word has its own page, Be it as a way, the Baal Shem Tov Siddur had certain, there's a couple siddurs that are associated with the Baal Shem Tov. So one was for Reb Shapsai Rashkov, and there's another Reb Shimshin. One is the son of the Toldus. Or into this. So they were finishing writing the siddur, the new siddur Baal Shem Tov with basic Arizal Kavanot. So there, this last siddur, and it's possible even Baal Shem Tov used it at the end of his life. And it says on the colophon at the end says, and this siddur we just finished now, sometime in like the end of Tammuz, which is 40 days or whatever amount of days from the passing of our teacher, master, the Baal Shem Tov, and it gives the date, the first day of Shavuos. So it's been confirmed that Baal Shem Tov passed away first day of Shavuos. And again, hopefully, I'd love to share with you the way it's described in the most important book of stories of the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, so these three, yes.
Sorry, are we going to get to Misnagdim? Maybe there'll be a leader. Are we getting to Misnagdim and Chasidim tonight at all? Or
I'm feeling well. This is the
No,
seventh.
I'm totally into this. I'm following you every
Okay,
word.
either way, yes, I was gonna say, okay?
Okay.
Well, we'll do some maybe not heavy because we don't, but certainly in a way associated to things like bringing that, like the idea. I'll tell you what. There's a continuation of what we were learning last week, having to do with Nasa and Nishma, and also what does it mean? How do we overcome and work out our not to get distracted with machshavas zaros? How is that explained in Chassidus? Okay, like in addition to the techniques we have, there's the positive way to do it also. Okay, but before we get there, let's just finish over here. Let me ask you like this, iPhone. What would you like? And after I finish what I'm about to say now, after that, would you rather first read the story of the Baal Shem Tov passing away, or the teachings of the Chassidus versus Misnagdim? What would you rather?
Yeah, definitely the story of the Baal Shem Tov,
Okay,
the way
let's
it's
do that.
related, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Baal Shem Tov.
Okay, good. So let me just share briefly what I just want to make the point here. Now, as these three, Moshe, David, and Baal Shem Tov, right? So their name, Baal Shem Tov's name was Yisrael. So, by the way, if you just mix around, it spells out the word miyad, Moshe, Yisrael, David. Take it from miyad mamish, like the Rebbe would say. Actually, in one of the Rebbe's later sikhs, there's a footnote that says miyad stands for Menachem, Yosef, and David, the last three Lubavitch Rebbe's also. So what's the difference? What does Moshe and David and Baal Shem Tov represent? It's similar to what we were speaking about before. The three levels of the world. There's a way the world could be just mainly spiritual. There's the way the world could be manifested more physical, but not fully transformed. And then there's the way the world could be physical, qua physical, and made fully transformed. So as we read before from the Medrash, and we know from Chumash, Moshe is the one who transmits. He goes up the mountain to bring the Torah, and then he comes back down. So true, he brings the Torah down, but still, it's still in a desert, which is a spiritual place. Also, once they left Mount Sinai with the Torah, it says openly in the pasuk that Mount Sinai wasn't holy anymore. It says that you could go up the mountain again. That the spirituality and the divinity even of God did not stay permanently in the physical. And Moshe, as we know, never made it to the promised land. He stayed in the day, he's mainly the desert. So Moshe represents primarily a spiritual state. Yes, the spiritual has broken. That's the difference of Moshe from the patriarchs. That now the spiritual has come down to earth in a way, but it not fully as far down as it can, and not fully permanent yet. Then comes David. David is in the Holy Land. David is the one who fights, right, and all that, and he sets up the kingdom of David, which lasts forever. And in the Holy Land, in Yerushalayim, right, and sets up for Shlomo to actually build a temple and all that. So David already represents a way of making the physical more permanent on the land of agriculture and all that, and in an everlasting edifice, unlike the Mishkan, which was still prefab, like temporary. So David represents being even more down to earth, but still it's in Israel. Still, it's Israel, which is a holy land, from beginning to end, where, as we know, everything was more refined, even in the physical in Israel. Okay, and it was pre-Gullus time. It was a time of when the people were safety, security, the kingdom of David and the people. Then comes stage 3, and that is when we are in exile, not in Israel. We're in Europe, wherever it was, and that's where the Baal Shem Tov appears. And there we're saying, so that Baal Shem Tov represents bringing the highest states of holiness to even the darkest places in the world, And in a way that even the physicality, which doesn't have any shine on it of spirituality, even in that, can be fully manifested with the divine. So these are the three stages that these three personas represent. By the way, they all three are called, there were leaders, kings. Moshe was called Bahi B'Shem Melech, was a king, King David for sure. And Baal Shem Tov was like the king, the founder of Chassidus, who brought it down. So now with emphasis on the third, Baal Shem Tov, this explains why also the Baal Shem Tov, and one of the great innovations, the Chidushim of Chassidus, is that you could serve God not just in prayer, Torah. Moshe represents Torah, right? Moshe Kibbutz Torah same, which is up down. I mean, bring down. David, King David represents prayer. The whole Tehillim is prayer, right? Is prayer, supplications. It's bound him up, but still spiritualized. It's not. It's still not in the tangible, physical. It was the Baal Shem Tov who would go out to help another person in the marketplace and be involved with the simple people and all that. He was the one that really brought the divine essence of into the most lowest and physicality, qua physicality. And right, and therefore, and I don't know if we'll have time tonight to go through teachings, but there are teachings galore. That's the whole vart of the Baal Shem Tov, that you can know God in all your ways. And there's Torah's galore that the idea of dveikus is even when you're walking down the street and you're dealing with another human being. Let me see if I could pull up really quickly. Maybe there's one I could just show, just so we say a teaching. Let me see if I quickly have open. I'll just give you one example. Oh, okay. I think. All right. Was actually, the ones I'm looking at is more emphasis on learning, but like in the Tzavot Rivash, he says it openly and many times. That it's through. In fact, there are places Baal Shem Tov says that that there's something accomplished that you can accomplish dafka by not learning, by being in the world and being involved in physical activities. Okay, so that is, by the way, one of the tensions between Chassidus and Misnagdim, because Misnagdim give so much of the emphasis that it's all exclusively about Torah. Anything else
That's
is
about
secondary.
Chomer.
Oh, very good, very good. Thank you very much for pulling out a Torah. It says that if you see the burden of your enemy, meaning the body, loaded down with mundaneness, don't run away from it, but help it out. Meaning that to be involved in the physicality of the world is a way to serve God. Yes, that's one of many teachings. I was looking specifically for places where he says that the idea of dveikus itself is in the world. Okay, maybe as we go along, I'll pull it out. So here too. Actually, we're going to see soon. Actually, you know what? This is going to be a good segue. Let me do like this. We're going to look at a vart and a continuation from last week, which I think makes this point, and then we'll go to the story of the Baal Shem Tov. Okay. So let me see where the window is, and that way we'll get it all in. Okay. All righty. I don't have too many windows open. All right. So last week, For those, I'm not going to go over it again because that otherwise we'll just be repeating every week. But in short, when we're speaking about the 3 steps of Achna, Havdalah, Hamtaka, right? So the 3 S's or Hayes, S like surrender, separation, and sweetening. And we said it doesn't just have to do when we times of davening, but even in interpersonal ways. That if you see something negative happening to someone else, be aware that it's happening for a reason, for us to discern that we have some similarity of that person's unwanted behavior in us, for us to work on ourselves and do tshuva. So it's only through hanging out with other people, being sociable, and even seeing flaws in others, that we're able to work on our own personal flaws on that same level. And from that, we segued into what do we do if there's disturbances while davening or learning? How do you deal with it? So as we said, that you contemplate that this has been divinely sent to you, the person to become overpowered, become stronger in his davening, and it's all for a purpose, to serve God. And again, we went into minute detail what this means last week, and also as enlightened a bit with the way Dr. Ed explains it in Tanya. We're not going to go there because you could watch or listen to the recording from last week. But here we're just going to go to the next part of it, and this is going to make the point that we said. And it is v'ha'ikar. You see on the screen, the most important thing is lahavin sh'Hashem yisbarach b'chol makom b'chol tzedakah, that God is in every place in all your dealings, meaning even not just in the synagogue or the yeshiva, but even in your workplace, even on the street, God is there, and anything that happens is God is part of it. Therefore, even in stories, telling stories, you could feel and learn things about the Creator, about God, just like you're learning in davening. And this we segued last week to speak about Reb Nachman's famous Sipurei Ma'aser stories, and we brought down a bit of a story of Reb Nachman last week and all that. Okay, so here too we see again, as we're saying, the emphasis of what we're saying about the Baal Shem Tov's innovation, chiddush of bringing down that the divine is not just in Torah like Moshe Rabbeinu or prayer like David HaMelech. Incidentally, the Torah is 5 books of Moses, right? And Tehillim is the 5 books of the King David, right? And the Baal Shem Tov represents all 5 levels of the soul in the world. Okay, so here we see again the Baal Shem saying that the divine is in everything, even the most mundane physical. So now we go to his interpretation of Nasa v'Nishma. The Gambir Inya Nasa v'Nishma. That this idea of Nasa v'Nishma, that first saying I'm doing and listening, Shu b'chol adam u'b'chol zman. This is not just back in times of Mount Sinai, but it's in every person, every time. Because through doing a physical act, you see, not even a mitzvah per se, not even doing a holy deed or ritual, but even doing something like I don't know, purchasing in the store, taking out the garbage, shining your shoes. This in that nasa, you see, he's interpreting nasa here not just to follow the Torah mitzvahs, but nasa, anything that we do in this world as physical sentient beings. We do an activity in this world. Through this, yuchol lishmaya ulahavin, we could hear and comprehend how this is a teaching in our serving the Creator, Hashem, God. Okay, that's why so much of the teaching of Chassidus, of Baal Shem Tov, and I know of Chassidim all the way down to this age, was that anything that they see and hear, in the Chabad, the previous earlier Rebbe's out there said, is a teaching, a lesson in serving God. that there was one of my great mentors was the famous Chassid Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, who wound up in Soviet gulags for like 15 years. And he said that when he went in, before he went in, he said he decided he's going to be exposed to the most, obviously, around the most despicable people and things that have nothing to do with spirituality or holiness or anything. But he said his approach to his experience to be in those terrible conditions was that anything he hears and sees will be a lesson, a teaching, to learn from that, a teaching how to serve God. And I would hear from him, and he would say, like, there was someone who was a tightrope walker over there to pull up a rope, and like what he learned from that, or from this local thief in the camps, or the cook, or things. He was always learning for 15 years. He didn't have any Torah, didn't have any books, but he learned from physical human activities, experiences of others. And that was the way he served God. And therefore this way of serving Hashem this way, story with the cards, maybe you'll share soon.
Okay.
Okay. Whether it's the prayer act that you listen and then you learn from that how to serve God. So through Torah, through the dvekas, through this doing, then you'll be shmi alahavin to understand, comprehend how to serve the Creator. So too in anything, even if it doesn't have to do with Torah or prayer, anything that happens in our lives is in itself a way to connect and learn and experience connection with the Creator and serving Hashem. Okay? And then, by the way, so here, I mean, this is a sweet, literally, teaching. He goes on from here. And I'll just read it quickly because it's part of the same thing, though it doesn't have to do exactly to what we're talking about, but just for the completion of it. That he follows here in the teaching. The most important thing is to get rid of all depression and only be in a state of joy. And he said, and meaning this is the Baal Shem Tov, it seems like, not. I don't think it's related to Reb Nachman Haradenka that it began with. I think it's the Baal Shem Tov himself says that he dreamt that he was in Israel, and he was confused. He wasn't sure. Maybe it is Reb Nachman Haradenka, who's the great grandfather or grandfather of Reb Nachman, who's named after him, who was a colleague of the Baal Shem Tov. There's different Torahs, and also in the stories of the Baal Shem Tov and Shimchei Baal Shem Tov, there's different narratives with him. So it's either Reb Nachman or Haradenka or the Baal Shem Tov was dreaming that he was in Israel, and he wasn't sure if he should leave Israel. In his dream, he wasn't sure if he should leave Israel until he saw in his dream that someone told him that there's all different types of doctors that give different medicine. So there's the doctors who give bitter medicine, right? Which is fine. But the best of doctors, their medicine is sweet. For those who are into plant medicines, it fits well. There's certain types of plant medicines that can be very bitter, but sometimes even though it's supposed to be, they can be sweet, and sometimes they actually are the most powerful. So what does this mean? What is this metaphor, doctors and medicine? So we'll see soon. When you read the next chapter, I'll just tell you. Bitter medicine means doing things, being in a state of like fasting too much, or being too melancholy or somber in one's serving Hashem, being too serious and so on. So that is bitter. That's not the way to serve Hashem. This is another great teaching of Hashem did. And in fact, something the Baal Shem Tov, actually, is one of the few authentic letters we have in the Baal Shem Tov, is he writes, and I think it's to Tel Yaakov Yosef, maybe to someone else, telling him to stop fasting and all this stuff. That's not the way to serve Hashem. And here he goes further. This is what we just said. That through fasting too much and putting on too strong sigufim. How would you translate sigufim? Like, I would say self-torture. That's too harsh. Like,
abnegation.
No. More than that. It's like practices where you do things to yourself, like to wear, let's say, deliberately wear uncomfortable shoes, or
Of affliction.
or to take, something like that, or take deliberately cold showers, freezing showers, things like that.
Mortification.
Or mortification, something like that. Good. And also the asmadas limud,
Exactly.
Gaiver atzmis. And this is an interesting insertion here. It says even learning too much could lead to depression. People who are just too fixated on learning and make it like some morose activity, like become too serious, somber in their study. That's also not good. Then why? Because that builds up too much depression. And then what happens? He says more.
Wow.
Yeah, basmadas limudes. He says, and moreover, what happens? Then there's what we spoke about in the past weeks also. Then you get too spiritual arrogance. Then you start judging other people that they're not as lofty and holy. You become holier than thou. You're not acting like it. And then what's happening? Then you're being so condescending spiritually to other people. Then you're saying others are just not worthy to even exist. And this is where he brings in the famous story of Shimon and Yochai and his son, who after 12 years leave the cave, and we know what happened when they encountered people and they were forced to be out. The basically blazed their way. They couldn't deal with the real world. They had to go back for 1 more year into the cave, so they were able to integrate, right? So this whole way of fasting and self-mutilation, all that's the bitter medicines. On the other hand, this medicine, the sweet medicine, that which is, like we said before, that if you hearken, you observe that even negative things that you see in others they're doing, not only you don't judge them or that what we call being malamet zchus, giving them the benefit of the doubt, or even learning, but you're saying even if it is something that other person did is terrible, but that is in order for my personal self-improvement, because I have a little bit of that similar activity in some way in me. Such way, this is a sweet medicine, sweeter than honey, and that is able to bring great mercy in the world and all people. And then you know that Hashem is in every particular detail of this world and following it. And that's the best sweet medicine, without any self-torture and
Sorry, by doing what, Baruch? By
observing, even if there's negative in the other. That's what we were reading from last week. That like see someone, I don't want to go into details of examples. Just think of someone shouting his head open, cursing on the street in road rage or something, right?
Right.
So rather than judging that, oh, that guy's just an a-hole or something, you say, why? Well, look at anger. But guess what? There are times in my life I also blow up, and maybe like not like exactly like that, but there are things, and and how should I deal with it and overcome it? By the way, this lesson of, if you see something even negative in someone else, to learn for yourself, is actually a great. There's a story with the second Lubavitch Rebbe, Reb Dave Ber of Lubavitch. I should say second Chabad Rebbe. That he was so. The story is that there's two separate stories, but it seems like they're related to one. I read one part in one place and one in another, but it seems like it's the same story. That okay, to go into the details. Okay, so the difference of a Rebbe from a therapist is what, and this is something very important for anyone out there who's thinking of becoming a Rebbe. Whereas a lot of therapists, their approach is to be
The therapists charge lots of dollars, and the Rebbe gives out dollars.
Gives out dollars a good way. No, the Chasidim would put in money in the pigeon to the Rebbe, by the way, part of it also. But I hear you. The point made. One is, whereas like most therapists, though it's changing these days, is to be to be impersonal, be objective in the name of objectivity. The Rebbe actually is supposed to find in himself something that's similar to whatever the Chassid is going through, to be able to relate to the Chassid. So you're thinking the tzaddik is such a holy of holy is. And then Chassid comes in with his problems in work, or I don't know, with his wife and things like, it's like two worlds coming together, but still the tzaddik the Rebbe has to find in him something a little bit. And that's why a lot of the effort of a Rebbe, of the Yechidus, had to do with that, working on themselves. And they would even sweat inside on the okay. Once in a while, they would even have to ask the Chassid to leave the room of the Yechidus, of the private audience they're having, for the Rebbe to think into something that can relate to. So here's an extreme example of this. And what I'm about to tell you, I've seen written. Actually, I gave a copy of a whole bunch of stories that are not printed, that were typed up from the manuscript. I actually gave it to Reb Zalman Schechter at Shavuot Eilat Chaim, maybe year 2002 or 03. And he was very happy. He told me the next day he stayed up that night reading it. Yes, iPhone. Yeah. So the story is that there was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, and he was a great chassid, a young chassid, and out of being a perfectionist spiritually, there's the whole thing. The chassid, before you travel to your Rebbe, to work on yourself, to be ready, prepared to receive from the Rebbe. So he was such a perfectionist that he pushed it off. It was like Tishrei time, and he said I'm not ready yet. He pushed it off to go through Rebbe later, and so he pushed up again and again but after a while, it was a very extended period of time. He wasn't visiting the Rebbe. But meanwhile, in whatever ways or other, he started slipping the other way, and he started being a bit callous here and there. In his spiritual practice, and he even started hanging out with the local priest of this town, debating Judaism or whatever other things. Now, as it happened, this local pastor had a beautiful daughter, and being in the house and what have you, they fell in love. He was attracted to her and what have you. And eventually he fell in love with her. To make a long story short, basically he converted. He married the daughter of the local priest. And they were together for a while. Then one day, out of there's some disease or what have you, this Christian, beautiful wife passes away, dies. And she's buried. And this person, this chassid, it was so broken by this loss and overwrought and desired her so much, even now that he actually went to the cemetery, dug her out, a fresh grave, and whatever relation he had with her, what we call these days necrophilia or whatever you want to call it. And it was and once that happened, at that time he had such regret that he collapsed there in something, and he started screaming Rebbe, Rebbe. And he dragged himself, and without any preparation of it, he just went straight to Lubavitch. By this time, the Alter Rebbe was already passed away. Now it was Rebbe Beth, and he comes straight to Lubavitch to see the Rebbe and to get a tikkun, to do tshuva. So he makes it there, goes in, he has Yechidus, and he tells, and he confesses to the Rebbe what happened the last few years and what happened at the end. So the one version of the story, and this even the Rebbe has in his first Maimer Bas Lagani, we say it's all related, that the Rebbe rolled up his sleeve and showed the chassid that how his arm was shriveled or had some defect or something was damaged, and he said, "This is me taking in that negativity from you As the Rebbe, he was even physically, it was manifested. So we already see here one lesson that a real Rebbe is someone that not only is connected on a spiritual, emotional level, but even physically manifests the suffering of the flock, so to speak, or even the sins of the flock, so to speak. That's number one. The other part of the story, which is to the point here, is that this was such an extreme type of sin, right? As we said before, the Rebbe has to find in himself a similarity. So what he tells the Chassid to leave for a while, leaves in his room chamber, so he could contemplate and find something in himself that could be. You think, wow, what does the Rebbe have to do with acrophilia? He pulls the Chassid back in, and he gave him a tikkun what to do. So what did the Rebbe find in himself? But here this. As we know, based on Kabbalah, especially Lurianic Kabbalah, that the whole idea of whatever we do, prayer or learning, is making yichudim, making unifications, which is similar to the populations of male and female, right? Yichud kushabrichu and shchite, masculine, feminine of the divine, and that is a wholesome unification on a spiritual level. What happens if you daven in a way that doesn't have 100% kavanah? And what have you? We spoke about in the past, like angels without wings. If you don't have the fear and awe and love, the two wings. And similarly, if you're davening or you're learning or you're mitzvah, what have you, is not with 100% kavanah, so then already you're bringing in, it's not 100% alive. That means there's already some aspect of death there. And you're making a union. Stays. So on a spiritual level, if you're doing a davening or learning without kavanah, then it's almost lahavdil or not, like necrophilia. So the Rebbe was finding in himself an instant case of maybe his kavanah while he was doing some davening wasn't 100% pious. That's. And once he was able to find such a situation, then he was able to now relate to the chassid. Okay? So that is just one example of what does it mean, even also here when we're learning through Baal Shem Tov, how to find in the other some flaw and how it could be a lesson for ourselves. And then of course, and then to help the other going through that issue. Okay. So now, as promised, okay, Yossi, I'll answer you briefly, and then we'll go to the story part. Okay.
Just a quick question. I'm
Yes.
curious. This aphorism by the Baal Shem Tov, with regards to finding, that the badness. There's a antecedent in the precedent, rather, in the Gemara where it says mum shabach. Is there a difference between those two sayings? Mum shabach, mum adam, something like that. If someone has a flaw, then he projects it onto someone else. Is there a difference?
You're right. There's a term called paisel b'mumay paisel.
Right.
Whoever sees a flaw in another it's his own flaw. Yeah, I would say that's a very good Chazal support to what we're saying here. Yeah.
No, but
Very
I know
good.
that the Baal Shem Tov had his own vart. I was wondering if there's any difference in his construction of his concept.
I think here, in the sense that it's not just saying what the facts are. Okay, twofold, but it's also telling us how we can refine ourselves, work on ourselves. That it's not just pointing out that we're imperfect. That don't judge others like the famous Christian thing. Whoever has not sinned may cast the first stone thing.
Right.
More than that, it's saying how we can fix it so that there's which leads to the second point. That's hashkacha pratis. Divinely, I'm here to witness the other doing something wrong for a purpose, in order that it bring it. That means it must be the reason I see the negative in another is not just because I have it, but in order that that which I have is revealed to me consciously, so I could fix it. I think that's the added stress with the Baal Shem Tov.
Okay, thank you so much.
But yes, and thank you for pointing that out, because that's really pertinent. So what we'll do is we'll read from the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov about the passing of the Baal Shem Tov, and then if we have some time, maybe we'll do one more Baal Shem Tov teaching on specifically on things like having to do with Havana or Machshav Zara and such. Okay, so actually, so this part, so just we don't have to. Now's not the time to go into all the details of what the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov is and all that. Basically, it's the first book of stories and even biography of the Baal Shem Tov. It was published in the early 18 teens, like 1813 or something, but it's based on manuscripts that were circulating for decades, already starting within the decade or two after the Baal Shem Tov's passing, 1760s. So even already possibly from the 1770s and up. Then it seems like the main collector of these stories, which are these vignettes, like anecdotal stories, is someone by the name of Daber of Linitz, I think, who was the son-in-law of one of the Baal Shem Tov scribes, and who was hanging out with the students of the Baal Shem Tov who were still alive after Baal Shem Tov and others. So these are quite and these are, you could say, these are quite like first or second-hand accounts, or from the people who have experienced, they've gone through these stories. And it's a fascinating collection. Everyone, especially academics, go over it like with tooth, what do you say? Tooth combs or something. Okay. Tooth nails and combs, right? Toothbrushes and comb, yeah. So and now, when it was published, it was actually published by a Chabad Chassid who had the printing press in Kapust, I think it was printed. And there he inserted the first quarter or third of it is actually the early stories of the Baal Shem Tov, how he came into the world, his old father, how he was born and grew up, and how he became a teacher, a Melamed, and all these really far out stories there, until more or less the time when he began revealing himself. There's that early chunk, and then it goes through all the different stories of Baal Shem Tov. And now that early part from pre-birth of Baal Shem Tov till he was ready to reveal himself, the publisher says this is what he received, or even possibly heard, I don't know what form, or received from the Alter Rebbe of Chabad, which is interesting because we don't really associate the Alter Rebbe with being on to storytelling. But that's the way it's published, and then the rest is the stuff from Daber Linitz. Okay, so now at the end of this whole collection, the last couple of stories, not mamash in the end, there's about the passing. Okay, just giving you the context here. So here we are. So he goes. Echtev ksas. I'm going to write a bit mitirase about the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. He passed away the first day of Shavuos. The earlier part, he speaks about a couple stories before about the passing of his wife, and that why he didn't want to remarry or something like that. Okay, but now we were dealing about Shem Tov. So he says, so here you already see Shivchei Baal Shem Tov, which is translated as in praises of Baal Shem Tov. He was already passed away the first day of Shavuos. I see your hand up. iPhone, anything brief, or is that from before?
Sorry, from before. I'm putting it.
Okay, all right. So now, we're giving the backstory. What led up to the passing of Baal Shem Tov? That the Pesach Shekaidim Zeh, that means 7 weeks before Pesach. The famous Pinchas Karetz, one of the main disciples of Baal Shem Tov and great also writer, receiver of the Baal Shem Tov. So he was visiting the Baal Shem Tov. And he was a little weak about Pinchas Karetz. And therefore, because he wasn't feeling well, he wasn't, the last day of Pesach, he wasn't sure if he should go to the mikveh or not. So Pinchas Karetz said, okay, you're not feeling well, let's go to the mikveh. That was that means, actually, this means Erev Shishal Pesach, that's what it means. Okay, so he didn't go to the mikveh for the last days of Yom Kippur, for Shishul Pesach. So now it came Shishul Pesach with tefillah. The Pinchas Kartzer is davening, and he had a vision. So he had a vision that there was a decree from above that the Baal Shem Tov will soon pass away, because the Baal Shem Tov was fighting, was strong struggle, fighting against the cult of Shabtai Tzvi, the Sabbatian. Like we spoke before, I'm not sure which story, but it is mentioned before. The story when they wanted to burn the Babylonian the Gemara. It's a famous story. Actually, when he says here Kashat Tzvi, it actually means the Frankist. The earlier Frankism, you'll see here, and Yaakov Empton and others describe it, still see it as a continuation of Shabtai Tzvi. As we know, Yaakov Frank was initially influenced, and he started off his cult of Frankism as an extension of Sabbatianism, actually the most radical faction of Sabbatians, Shabsai. And it was only later, especially when he came back to Europe, and later when he was challenged to convert to Christianity, that you could say when he
Islam.
To Christianity. That's
Oh,
the difference.
Frank had that. Okay.
Right.
Frank.
So when he converted to Christianity, that is when it seems like you could define it as different than Sabbatianism. So it has its origins in Shabtai Tzvi, but it became its own creature, or monster even, if you want to call it. And part of that was the famous disputation, I think it was in Lvov, right? In Lviv, as they call it now, of the Talmud. And that is when the Frankists sided with the churches to debate. They were called the anti-Talmudists, they were calling themselves then. And I forget which year, it was 1758 or 9, maybe it was 1759, something like that. Right before the passing of Baal Shem Tov, like a year or so before. Pavel Manietsky and what's his name? Jay Michelson have written books on Frankism in the last few years in great gory detail. And if anyone wants,
I was about to ask you.
You could
Mark,
look it
what
up.
was the name of the books again?
One is Mixed Multitudes. That's Pavel Manietsky's book. He's actually the more of the scholar and historian, and he knows Polish, and he's gone through all the materials. Jay Michelson's book, I don't recall the title. It was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award. It may have won the National Jewish Book Award. I don't remember. But I would say they're both worthy of reading. I personally have not read either in detail. So again, what I have read about this period and other things is more from original sources, or from the way it's brought down also even in Hasidic sources. The previous Rebbe in Likutei Deburim has this version of it. And in that was that the Baal Shem Tov sent a student of Chaim Rappaport, author of the Heshiv Kayin, Responsa, who was involved to defend the Talmud. And the great story and miracle from the traditionalists, from the first side, is that the priest who was supposed to go and burn the Talmud actually suddenly died before it could happen, and that's what saved the whole Talmud burning. So this and other things, so apparently Baal Shem Tov was having warfare with the Sabbatians. There are other places in Shivchei Baal Shem Tov earlier where he talks about Shabtai Tzvi as being an aver meduldal, like a limb that's hanging just by the skin, so it's like a flapping, hanging limb to the body of Israel. And it was just barely holding on to Judaism. But then Shabtai Tzvi's ego, arrogance, made the final severance. And that's how Shabtai Tzvi fell off the body of Israel, so to speak. Other places, the earliest stories here, Shivchei Baal Shem Tov, is that there's even at one point the Baal Shem Tov and Shabtai Tzvi have almost a showdown, fighting it out, like in some place between earth and hell, like in some place in the abyss. when I read that, it reminded me, I don't know if you know one of the final stories of Sherlock Holmes. He has this something where he also falls down and has some fight out with some villain. That's what it reminded me of. Be it as it may, the Baal Shem Tov was seen, even though he never physically, I mean, as far as we know, hasn't physically encountered any of the Sabbatians, but it was understood and seen that he was having the spiritual, real, fight against Sabbatianism. So it was almost like, what again?
Is it Elie Wiesel says that supposedly in that narrative that he couldn't redeem his soul or something? Is that how it goes down?
He said he couldn't redeem because, different ways to read it, but I would say that, he couldn't redeem because it was saying that he already cut off entirely, especially after he converted and all that. That's the understanding. I haven't read it in a long time, so I don't want to read too much or misquote by heart. But there. Academics read that story with the fight with Shabbatzi one way and traditionalists another way. I forget who was it, Liebes or someone, as the way that the more traditionalists don't like. Whatever it is. The general point is that it was understood even in this time that Baal Shem Tov, and this is something very fascinating to be aware of, that that Baal Shem Tov was seen as the superhero almost, that fighting the nemesis of Shabtai Tzvi, the spiritual superhero, and that in fact that possibly the whole Baal Shem Tov innovative way and Chassidus and all that was to be a counter force to Sabbatianism. And it explains a lot of things. Why, like, for example, like there's certain teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that can sound like it's teetering on the edge of I don't want to call it full antinomianism, certainly not. But as my teacher, Professor Elliot Wolfson, coined the phrase for Hasidus, hypernomianism, not antinomianism. Like in a way transcending the law in a way, but still anchored in the law, still observing the law. There, okay? Aver Medilda, that's it. Yeah. That's what it is, iPhone, yes. I saw it in the chat. So also explains why the Misnagdim had issues with the Baal Shem Tov, because they felt, you know what I mean? It was not out of the blue, because there was something happening with Baal Shem Tov that reminded them maybe of what they were just dealing with, the Sabbatians and the Frankists.
Baruch,
yes.
Sorry, in this connection, don't we always have that in their camp itself, the author of the Mesilas Yesharim was suspected and was raided for those very reasons as well? Are you familiar with that?
Yes, or Ramchal, right?
Ramchal, correct, yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, Ramchal openly wrote and gave into Rabbi Yeshaya Bassan, was his teacher, and others, and he wrote openly that he's not, and all that. But you're right, they were initially alleged, and there were others. He wasn't like Nehemiah Chiyun, who was openly Sabbatian, the first one to actually openly publish Sabbatian material, right? So not like that. Right. But yeah, so I mean, Rab Chal is accepted. Even in his time, he was more or less, I mean, he was seen as also on the margin for being too much, writing his own Tehillim Psalms, even being too much into writing his own like non-sacred literature, speaking about visions, things that were also reminiscent of those in the Sabbatian camp in a way. But ultimately, he never preached abrogating Torah, things like that. Though, and again, so a lot, but right. So in a way, actually, when it comes to actual teachings, you could Hasidus would have more. This is what I think, that Hasidus would have more that could be distorted by Misnagdim to say, oh, this is and like the Sabbatians. And I mean, a lot of our project that we've been going through the last with the series is and especially more recently is to show at what points the subtleties of it, meaning that the Chasidim, like on the one hand, the Chasidim were not crossing that line to Sabbatianism. But on the other hand, the way ideas were expressed allowed enough interpretation by the Misnagdim camp to accuse them of being Sabbatian or being heretical in antinomian ways, right? That's what that's this whole thing of the Machshava Zara thing, alien thoughts leads to that. That's what we were saying before, that Misnagdim were interpreting it, that the Chasidim are saying you're supposed to have alien thoughts while you daven or learn in order to elevate. Whereas what I would say personally is a more accurate reading is not that it's not really about alien thoughts, that of course you should not have, but if unconsciously and helplessly they do fall into your head, then how to deal with it. Not that you should initiate by one's own initiative to start thinking things outside of prayer. And even where it says where it could be interpreted to think things on, it doesn't really mean outside of prayer, it means in the context of the prayer itself, and so on and so forth. So here, so this too, right? And I mean, there are other elements. So, and again, we'll speak next time more in detail when we have more time to focus more primarily on this on the debate issues. Well, I just wanted to make one more point related to just the historical context of Sabbatianism and Frankism to Chassidism, because this whole series we've been learning was started off right, saying that there are three main waves of the excommunications of Misnagdim against Chasidim, right? 1772, and now we're dealing with 1772 or 73. Now we're speaking 1781 and 82. Now, if you look at the language of the nusach of the excommunications of the early 1770s and Misnagdim against Chasidim and in 1780s too, they are actually echoes of the Chayrim, the excommunications they put out. I think actually the year was 1757 or 1758 against the Frankists. So they already had the experience of putting the Frankists into excommunication and writing it up and doing the dissemination of it to different towns and in the marketplace in a way that everyone could hear. That was then, 1757 or whatever, late 1750s. So therefore, when it came 15 years later, where the Hasidic movement was what they saw as going out of control, they just continued in that way and just wrote it, updated almost the excommunications to fit the current situation of putting the Chasidim into Chayr, the excommunication. Just showing you how much there is a linkage of the Frankist phenomenon with the emergence of Chassid. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. So because Reb Pinchas Karatz saw that there is this kitrug, as we say, this thing, the divine sensitivity. I don't have a better word for it now. 2 a.m, and that because of Baal Shem Tov's successful battle against the Frankists to avoid the burning of the Gemara, so now the Baal Shem Tov has to absorb that. Like someone has to take the fall for it, right? Like we say that there's a negative. So that will be the passing of the Baal Shem Tov earlier than he was supposed to. And the Pinchas Karatz felt that the Baal Shem Tov's passing is imminent because of this fight with the Shabtai Tzvi cult. So Pinchas Karatz, he tried to now daven with strong because he had this vision while he's davening. Incidentally, we're seeing here another. By the way, here's an example of how you could have I don't know if you want to call it a foreign thought, but he's having a vision while he's davening, and maybe he stopped davening to have the vision, whatever it is, but it's during his davening time. So he has the vision. My Rebbe is going to pass away. So now he tries to daven stronger and with more kavanah in order to combat, to break this gezerah from above. And the Baal Shem Tov should not pass away from him. But it didn't help. Karatz's power as a davening couldn't stop the gezerah from above. So he blamed himself that this is because he didn't go to the mikveh before Yom Tov. So therefore his davening wasn't fully pure enough, and therefore he wasn't able to combat this heavenly decree of the Baal Shem Tov's passing. So Ba'acha Tefillah. So then, okay, finishes davening. So after davening, he didn't tell Baal Shem Tov what the vision he had. So just Baal Shem Tov on its own asks him, "Hey, Pinchas, did you go to the mikveh yesterday?" And Pinchas answered, "No. Read that? I didn't go yesterday to the mikveh." Baal Shem Tov said, "Parnasa Maisa." That it's already done. There's nothing we can do about it. In other words, Baal Shem Tov had the premonition, understood, knew what Pinchas Karz's vision was and about his own imminent demise. And he says, we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything. It's like the deed was done already above. That Beis Shem Tov is saying that I'm going to pass away soon. And there's no way to reverse it. Now he continues. Baal Shem Tov had the illness of shilshul. Shilshul is like gastrointestinal. So that seems like Baal Shem Tov's issue. But incidentally, Baal Shem Tov seems like suffered with things with going to the bathroom. And in fact, there's different things, even teachings and terrors of how to deal with if you need to go to the bathroom while you're davening, how to overcome the urge. And even different, it's very interesting, even has certain teachings about this, about, I don't know, scatological situations. I don't have a better way to define it. I see, yes, iPhone, yeah. I don't know, I think it's more diarrhea than constipation, it's probably, right? Okay.
In modern Hebrew, it's called shilshul, yeah.
Right. Im kolzeh.
It comes from shalshelet.
Right. Like on right, right.
Is it acknowledged that the Baal Shem Tov was in poor health for a lot of his life? And
I don't know if it was a lot of his life, but especially at the end. But the bathroom thing, yeah, it is different. I've seen different places, both in print and even in manuscript, that I've seen that are not published yet. Where he has a school, like some of his schools is how to deal with these situations. Remember, he was a medicine man.
Right.
He was dealing with physical things too.
Right.
And it's interesting. Some places, I don't know where. Maybe we'll see later. Things, so certain ways, things, even physical things, that sometimes Baal Shem Tov tried to first work at it through talk. And that's another thing important to know. That's one of the earliest sources that we had the whole concept of talk therapy, which we attribute to Dr. Freud. In fact, in the Shifra Baal Shem Tov, there's more than one situation where Baal Shem Tov is like a therapist. If someone is having a schizoid experience or this vision, he goes and sits and speaks with the person, and the person's better, comes out better. Or other things, the diburim, through diburim. So you could say diburim means talk, it out with other, or certain incantations and what have you. And then sometimes it would say if the talking didn't help, then he would employ more medicinal approaches. Okay, it's very, very interesting. Okay, so after Pesach, so this seems like this was the final illness that he had. Was this related to shilshul? Even so, Baal Shem Tov still would strengthen himself. He would hold himself up enough to be able to daven at the Amud. There's also stories throughout Shifra Baal Shem Tov davening for the Amud, and how his davening for the Amud opened up people's hearts and even minds in learning and so on and so forth. We don't have time now to go through them, but I would highly recommend if anyone wants more, to get your copy of Shifra Baal Shem Tov. It's been translated in English, different versions. I think Jerome Mintz has one and others. Yeah. Okay. Now the narrative continues. Now those students, that means the elitists, the creme de la creme of his students, that were known that they're the best daveners, and that even that their davenings could have the most effect above, right? Lahidim klum, Baal Shem Tov didn't let them know about his imminent demise. He kept this secret from them. But he didn't want any intervention. His students even should daven for him that he should not pass away. Not only that, The Shalach Esim Chaim Zacher. He even told the students, hey, leave Mezhebush, go there and there. He didn't even want them around. He was like, Baal Shem Tov was saying that he's ready to leave this world. He didn't want anyone to intervene with him. However, Rav Pinchas Karetz didn't go home, didn't go back to Karetz or wherever. It's probably because Pinchas Karetz already knew what's up. It doesn't say openly, but it's implied, and it's probably Pinchas Karetz kept this secret from the other students, from his fellow Talmidim Chasidim. Okay. So now a few weeks go by. This is how it goes by. So Belel Shavuos Eve, right? So what Nes Anshe Skulasim, we need to allow let's take an arizah. So everyone got together to learn to do the Tikkun Shavuos, like the way the arizah said to go. So by the way, it's totally unrelated, but just make a note that, by the way, if you want to say the beginning, what is the beginning of the emergence of the Shabtai Tzvi movement? It was also the night of Shavuos of the year 1665. That is when Nathan of Gaza had his vision that Shabtai Tzvi is the so-called Mashiach, and that started the whole movement. And so there's something about the Shavuos Eve. Okay, so but back to the Baal Shem Tov. So they got together to do Tikkun Arizah, right? Tikkun Shavuos. But so Amar Lifneim did the Torah. So Baal Shem Tov started saying Torah to his students on what subject? On Inyan HaSeder, Inyan Matan Torah, about the Pesach Seder and about Matan Torah. Suppose linking Pesach to Shavuot, some great Torah. But Baker, so then the next morning, Shavuos, first day Shavuos in the morning, Shalach Anshe Skula. So he called for his close people. He sasvu kulam that they should come together. The tzivah Leib Kessler. So he called Reb Leib Kessler. He's mentioned in other parts of Baal Shem Tov. He was one of his students and helpers, I think. And so the writer of this thing, and it's another person, he forgot his name. The Baal Shem Tov called them, and he let them in on the news that he's going to pass away soon. And he's telling them now, while he's alive, Baal Shem Tov is instructing them how they should bury him. And he taught them on his very body. What does it mean? As he is passing on, like these are the last hours of here on earth, he's showing them on his body. What does it mean? How to tell if when limb by limb that the life force is leaving that limb of the body. He's showing them how it's like the life force leaving the toes and then the feet and then the legs, whatever it may be. Why is he doing this to them? Because Lev Kessler and this other one were part of the Chevek Kedisha. So he's showing them practically so that they can know when they're dealing with those that are mortally ill, how they could identify and recognize when the person is about to pass away and how the person is passing on. Okay? So he's showing them on his own body. What does it mean for the life force to leave? Then the tziva, he instructed his close people. Baal Shem Tov instructed them. Then I suppose he told these two that they should go and gather a minyan to daven with him. In his tziva she'iten leya siddur, and he asked that they give him a siddur to daven. But Baal Shem Tov said, he says, I want to hang around with Hashem still a little bit more. So he davened with his siddur. I suppose it was Shacharis. Well, after davening, I suppose he was davening at home because the minyan was in his house minyan. And then one of his main disciples and comrades, Nachman Hardenka, the aforementioned Nachman Hardenka, the Torah we were learning earlier, So he went on his own from the Baal Shem Tov's house to daven because it was obvious Baal Shem Tov's not well, and he's his life force is leaving. So he went on his own to the base medrash over there in Mezhebus to daven for the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov, when he said Nachman Haradenka going to the Bishach, he's making noise. He's making a tumult up in heaven for nothing. It's not going to work. Because if he would be able to walk through the same type of door, that means the door above. Pesach even sounds like he's pointing to his own door of his house, but he means the door is the heavenly gate. And if Rav Nachman Ademka really was at my level to know to walk through the right gate that I usually walk through to heaven, or I go through, then his prayers will work. But obviously, Rav Nachman Ademka is not. Baal Shem Tov is saying he's not on my level to know the right gate to walk through for his prayers to have the full effect. In this time, while the Baal Shem Tov is in his house, in this period, the last moments of his life, nichnas etzli nishmas meisach, the soul, the spirit of someone who passed on already, entered his house. Because this is another thing, Baal Shem Tov would make tikkun for even departed souls. And they would come show up to him, even as spirits in his house. So here, like, there's a soul hanging around. What's the word? Like sometimes people would do, according to the sin so much that they're just souls without bodies lingering on earth. And they need a tikkun so that they could be released and go back up in heaven. So this soul of this whatever person who passed on must have sensed the Baal Shem Tov's last moments of Baal Shem Tov on earth, and he has to chaperein and go to the Baal Shem Tov to get a tikkun, so he could finally make it up to heaven. So this dead person's spirit comes into Baal Shem Tov's house. For Baal Shem Tov makes that, but Baal Shem Tov chastises the soul, and he tells the soul, Shmayinim shanim ata navenad. For 80 years, you've been wandering on earth, like kafekelom, like you've been wandering around earth. And you waited for the last minute? You didn't hear until now that I'm here on earth? Well, why are you waiting for the very last minute? You could have come a long time ago to me to make the tikkun for you. So therefore, say Russia, get out of here, you Russia. So the Baal Shem Tov chases the soul, the spirit, out of his house, right? Okay, you think, okay, good riddance, but no. Baal Shem Tov, what did he do right afterwards? Take up Amal Mashar, he tells his servant right away, that the spirit flew out of my house, but now it's going down the street outside. And the spirit is in such uncontrollable state that it could damage people on the street outdoors. So now run outside quickly and tell everyone on the street to go away, get off the street, because the spirit is running loose and it could hurt people. And guess what? The whoever's writing the story says, so it was. And the spirit did hurt or damage the young woman of the daughter of the Shamash of the town of Mezhebus. Though not everyone was able to escape in time. Okay, now the servant of Baal Shem Tov comes back into the home of Baal Shem Tov. And he hears Baal Shem Tov Amar. He hears Baal Shem Tov speaking. No one's there. He almost looks like himself. He's saying aloud. I forgive you for those 2 hours. Don't hurt me. Don't torture me. He's like saying it, but there's no one around. He's just talking. So Hashem Tov's assistant asks him, so Rebbe, dear Baal Shem Tov, who are you talking to about to forgive the 2 hours and don't hurt me? So Baal Shem Tov says, don't you see the angel of death? That he's right here in the room with me now? Because usually the angel of death would always be afraid of me or would run away from me. Like people say, Like people say, to chase away the angel of death to the place where black pepper is grown. There's such a thing. Again, like they say, to chase away the angel of death to the black mountains. And Baal Shem Tov always, usually, normally went throughout his life, had the power, and he would just chase away the angel of death from his presence. But now, and now Baal Shem says, now that they from above, they gave the angel of death permission to have power over me. Look, the angel of death grew wide shoulders. And he's all happy. I'm finally getting to chap the Baal Shem Tov now with death. So that's what Baal Shem Tov is saying. Basically saying, I have 2 more hours here on earth, so don't bother me, don't torture me these last 2 hours on earth. Okay. Now it continues. Now all the people in the city came to the Yom Tov. It must have been after davening and whatever, in the afternoon already. And all the people came to see the Holy Baal Shem Tov in his house to say good Yom Tov to him. And so they all came into his house. Amalek named Divrei Torah, and the Baal Shem Tov said again more Torah to the people who came to his house. And then during the meal, must have been the Yom Tov meal, the first day. Doesn't mention if there were blintzes or not. Anyways, Siva Masharis, he tells his assistant, to fill up a large plate with honey and present honey on the table. But the assistant filled up a small plate with honey. Amar. So the Baal Shem Tov said, Ein shilton b'yamamavis. It's a paraphrase that one does not have control on one's day of death. The literal meaning is that one doesn't have control on when one will die, on which day the person will die. But Baal Shem Tov is interpreting more that the day that you die, you lose control of the situation, of what's supposed to happen. And I feel that even my assistant, my God, doesn't listen to me. I asked for honey in a big plate, big, and he's giving me a small plate. Okay. And then the Baal Shem Tov said, I suppose to those assembled in the room, Ad kan gamalti imachem. Until now, that means until now, my whole life with you, I was the one bestowing chesed, kindness, mercy, generosity to you, right? Because that's, again, Baal Shem Tov was goyma chasadim, do good, as we were speaking about earlier. But now, and now it's time for you to return and bestow chesed, generosity upon me. This is the idea that taking care of a nifter, someone who passes away, is the inyan of goyma chasadim. Right, so he's here again intimating that his end is very near. It's time for now people take care of him. And this is what I think Beis HaKivud means. Then he went to the outhouse, I suppose, something like that. Right? We say even in modern Hebrew, kibudim, like it's a euphemism for going to the bathroom. So he went out to go to the outhouse, apparently. His assistant wanted to follow him there. I suppose he noticed Baal Shem Tov is not well, and so now Baal Shem Tov asked his assistant, what's today different than days before until now, earlier days, or other days? That you want to follow me even to the outhouse. Mara used to be. What do you see in me special today? Right? He told him basically not to follow. So the assistant didn't follow. Okay, apparently when he came back, and Gam Amar Lahem, so then the Baal Shem Tov also told those assembled to them, Hasimin, the sign, the signal, that of his passing will be, Shekasha Yifter Yamdu Hashne Zegas. When he passes away, the 2 clocks of the house will stop clicking. And this is a thing also, you see in other stories of tzaddikim and rebbes, and the whole thing is that when they pass away, the clocks of the house or the watches stop working. So apparently, Baal Shem Tov's house, there was 2 clocks, one bigger one, one smaller one. Okay. He tells him that's the signal. When the 2 clocks stop, then you'll know I for sure passed away. I so maybe that was it. So I suppose this is when we came back from the outhouse. It says, Rachatz Yadav, he washed his hands. Vazeke Gadol Amad. And the bigger of his two clocks stopped working, working. So people didn't want the Baal Shem to realize that the big clock already stopped, so they stood surrounded and they like covered, standing in a way that the Baal Shem couldn't, that they blocked the vision of seeing the big clock that stopped. But still, Amalahem, the Baal Shem told them, don't think you could cover it up. I know that the big clock already stopped ticking. And I'm not worrying about myself, about my passing. I know clearly that I'm going to go out from that door and enter right away the other door. It's again, it may have even been pointing to the doors of his house, but the idea is there. You know, like Lahavdil or not, the indigenous say that that when one passes away, it's walking. What is it? Crossing through the doorway or the threshold, crossing the threshold or something. You're saying, in other words, he's saying, I know I'm going to have a smooth departure from this world. I'm going to right away enter whatever in heaven, Gan Eden, smooth. In other words, he's saying his whole passing away thing is just exiting one door and entering another doorway. Okay. V'yashev al mitasei, Baal Shem Tov sat on his bed. The tzila, and he instructed sheyamdu savim mitasei, and he said that the people there, someone should stand around his bed. And now he told him another divrei Torah. It seems like this may have been his last Torah. He said on the subject al amud. There's a concept in Kabbalah and other places, even mentioned, I think, in Gemara, that between the different lower Gan Eden and paradise, upper Gan Eden paradise, there's a amud, a pillar, a muda, and this idea that the neshamas they use this like almost. I don't want to use the metaphor of like not to make it too. Mundane in a way, but like you think of like a fireman's pole, right? There's so it's explained two ways. Both that the pillar is the transition to go from lower to above, but sometimes it also says that the neshama on could also be slide down the pillar and then go up. Okay, so this amud is the way either the neshama goes up or slide down and then go up more. Okay. But the point is that there's a pillar between the lower, each level of paradise, of Gan Eden. And also between each world, and between each world, I suppose like that's between Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, going more up, Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, up to Atzilus, that there's this amud, that sometimes it's called amud de nahira, of the pillar of light. I forget the other terms of it. It comes to me, okay. And he explained it also, Heichu ba'ashan, how it is. Ashan doesn't just mean here smoke, but it's an acronym of Mershtavis for Olam Shana Nefesh. On the world level, on the time level, and it means space and time and soul. Like giving and explaining deeply, basically, the process of how the soul elevates not only the parts of the body, but how it ascends from world to world, up from this world up to the different levels of Gan Eden. And he explained it in the way of that process of the Aveda, that it works, how the neshama ascends up to the highest levels of Gan Eden. So he's almost talking about his like he's giving the itinerary, almost description of his own flight of his soul that he's about to take. And he told him to say the verse that we said earlier in Sfir Sa'imer, Vihinaya, that it should be pleasant and all that. The Shachav, the Yashav Kamepam, and he lay down and he sat several times. The Kivan, the Kavanas, the Baal Shem Tov had great concentration Kavanas. Ad Shalish, and not just like in his in his mind, but he was saying the Kavanas with his lips. And he was saying it so in some form that it's maybe so loosely, so rapidly, and said in almost like a trance way, actually until they weren't able to make out and decipher exactly the letters that he was saying. We kind of like it almost became sounding like gibberish, which wasn't. He was verbalizing, enunciating different kavanas, which until a state where it was just total beyond recognition, oral recognition. Or auditory recognition. Okay. Then the Tziva Lachasis Besanin, he instructed they cover him with a sheet. The Hischol is Dazeya. He started to tremble, shake. The Lachrit, maybe Shmenes, and shuckle like at Shmenes. And this is interesting because we do have descriptions in the Baal Shem Tov how he would shake. And it seems it was in great gesticulations. Sometimes when the Baal Shem Tov was having an ecstatic experience, it says he would shake so much, almost like what's the description if I recall? Almost like chas v'shalom, like a chicken that's being slaughtered, or like his head would flap all the way from down to his heels or knees and backwards also, like it was in full body shakes up and back and forth. So this is what he must have been doing in bed also, like really shaking, shuckling away.
Possibly Parkinson's. Possibly.
I don't know. I think this was because it doesn't say anywhere that he was shaking when he didn't want to.
Only when he was
only when he was davening or having a certain ecstatic experience. Actually, there's the teaching also of why would he shake so much? Why shaking to daven? He once said that Hashem once said that if someone is drowning in the sea and he needs to be saved, and he's really flapping all about. No one's going to ask, why is he flapping? Why is he shaking so much? Of course he's doing it. He's saving his own life. He says, I do that when I'm davening also, because when I'm davening, it's to save my life. It's my soul. Okay, so he was doing all this shuckling in bed, shaking up and down, or whatever, right to left, however. And then, then he settled down a bit. Ma'at. That means slowly, gradually, he stopped shaking. That means that shaking and all that was the moment that his soul was leaving his body fully. And then he started becoming more quiet, the body and they noticed that the small clocks stopped working. So they still waited longer. See, maybe the Baal Shem Tov will come back. But no, didn't happen. So they nichun netza al chitmei b'rov nifter. And then they did what is known, the last signal. Someone passed away, you take a feather, put it at its nostrils. If there's no breath coming out of the nostrils, the person passed away. And that was the sign. They did it, and they saw that the Baal Shem Tov passed away. Okay? So there's one more piece here, and then another piece. This all I heard from Rabbi Yaakov, who was there, who was in Mezhba, from the town of Mezhbush, who apparently was there then. Rabbi Yaakov must have made Aliyah and passed away in Israel. But he heard it from Rabbi Yaakov himself, who was apparently either it was there or he heard it from people in Mezhba. Rav Amar, and this Rabbi Yaakov said, Sheblev Kessler. Okay, so maybe Rabbi Yaakov wasn't there at the actual that passing, but he certainly heard from Rabbi Kessler, who was there. He said that Rabbi Kessler told him, that Rabbi Kessler saw the exiting, the exiting of the soul from Baal Shem Tov's body, which it looked like blue flames of fire. What does this remind you a bit of who's passing? If you look at the Idra Zutta at the end of the Zayar, which describes in detail how the Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai passes away. And there also, it's like it says there that a circle of fire surrounded the Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and that was a sign. Also, they passed away. And then later, also during the funeral, when the procession of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, there was also smoke and fire and so on, following, leading the way. So another piece of two. So once, so several weeks before he passed away, Rabbi Kessler came to the Baal Shem Tov, and Baal Shem Tov let Rabbi Kessler know that he's for sure going to pass away soon. Apparently, it wasn't just Pinchas Kartzer who knew, but Rabbi Kessler also knew. Rabbi says, oh, you know what? I will give my head for your head, my eyes for your heads. Meaning, Rabbi says, I'm willing to give up my life, Rebbe, in order that you continue living. But Baal Shem Tov turned it down. He didn't want that. Apparently, there were some great spiritual powers that were taken from the Baal Shem Tov the last year of his life. He says, halavai, they would return me those powers that they took from me the past year. And he didn't want to live because why should he live? He doesn't have these great powers. Why Baal Shem Tov is saying, why should I continue living if I don't have these great powers that were taken from me the past year? This again intimates that possibly the whole episode for the Frankists had a spiritual effect on the Baal Shem Tov himself, that it was almost sucked away his spiritual powers almost. And now Baal Shem Tov realizing that says, therefore he doesn't want to live. He'd rather not live than to be on a diminished spiritual state. Okay. Okay. Now one last story, and this has to do with Baal Shem Tov's son. And Baal Shem Tov only had one son and one daughter. Daughter was Adul, and his son was Tzvi or Herschel. And the tradition is that actually that Tzvi took over from the Baal Shem Tov after he passed away, the first year, 1760 Shavuos, until the first yard site. But during the first yard site, when all the Talmud students of Baal Shem Tov were together, Reb Tzvi at the meal said he said, I'm now having a vision here of my father is here now, and he's telling me and showing me that it's actually the Maggid, the Dov Ber of Mizrich, is to be the successor from now on. And that is when Reb Tzvi gave up his position as the head of the Chassidic movement of the people, and that is when the Maggid became the leader in development. So it's showing two things, but it's showing firstly that Herschel was in a very high level, and then also that as we'll see, but eventually he did not become the leader of the Chassidic movement. So in a way, the very beginning of Hasidism was not hereditary in the way it's now. So the two main disciples, the successors, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid was not related to Baal Shem Tov. Neither was the Taldas Yaakov Yosef. It was also these were two of the top students of the Baal Shem Tov. Okay. I'll just say quick. So it says before it begins about the day of his passing, it says that so the Baal Shem Tov's wife predeceased him. And people were trying to encourage him to marry another woman. Baal Shem Tov answered them surprisingly, do I need a woman? I abstained. I was basically celibate. I did not sleep with my wife for 14 years. And yet this Herschel, my son Herschel, was born al pi hadibur, through the word, the holy word. There's a way of like almost spiritual, divine conception, which is done not through actual sex, but through using the holy words of God's name or incantations and so on. The Baal Shem Tov was saying, you think my son, I was even procreated through having a wife? No, he was born api hadibur, right, through the holy word. So now this is what the final piece we'll read about this, the book that will be the day that Baal Shem Tov passed away. His son Tzvi was sleeping. Because his son Tzvi didn't know or didn't believe that this is the day his father is going to pass away. He was sleeping in his house, wherever. He told Baal Shem Tov, why don't you call your son to you, since you see, you know you're going to pass away. Why do you call your son and give him over like a last will and testament? But Baal Shem Tov said, what should I do? He's sleeping. Okay, here it says openly. The Tzvi was asleep because he didn't believe his father was going to pass away then. But still, they went out. They woke up at Tzvi and they told him, your father, the Baal Shem Tov says he's for sure going to pass away today. So he came to the house. Once he heard that it's for sure, that his father said so, he started to cry. So like his father. Like, what's that? Amalei of this, his father told me, I know that I gave you your special soul. Because when I unified with my wife, it means with your mother. So here it's saying actually not that he did not have sex at all, apparently. I suppose he was with his wife in bed intimate, but still it wasn't just that procreated his son. They're saying when I was in union with my wife, all the heavens trembled. And if I wanted to, my power, I could have brought the soul of Adam Rishon. There's different versions. I think there's another one. There's another version that says Eliezer Reb Shimon, Eliezer the son of Reb Shimon Yochai, in the way of Ibur, which is pregnancy of souls. So there's two ways to read this. Either that he meant that he could have brought down the high soul of Eliezer, Adam Rishon, or Eliezer the son of Shimon Yochai, when Tzvi was conceived, or another reason. Reading this, that I could now make this idea of impregnation of the soul, which can be done even from one living being to another, or from one person who passed away into a living being. So it's like a form of reincarnation. I think we spoke about this a while ago. Difference of Ibur and Gilgal. Be it as it may, the Baal Shem Tov is saying, he's telling his son, I could have brought down into you the most lofty of souls, as great as your soul is already. And I would know, or maybe the reading is supposed to end that you would know all that needs to be known. He says, but don't worry, dear son. You don't need any higher great soul, because the soul you have already is just so holy that you don't need any other soul. Okay, so there's no reason to even carry on into you now any new holy soul. See, I said, nonetheless, please, Tati, Daddy, please tell me something for now that you're about to pass away. The Hitzli Lemelei. I think, I'm not sure how this reading is. I do have a print copy of it. Maybe this is a misprint. I'm not going to dig for it now. It could be Hitzli is like he reigned, or maybe that he was really begging his father to tell him something, like some last words before he passes on. Or rather, no, I'm sorry, it's my memory. I think it's V'hitzil Lo Malay. That maybe the Baal Shem Tov himself started like ringing to tell him. He's like started saying, maybe like stuttering or saying things that were incomprehensible to his son. Tzvi started telling him something. Amar, any maybe match shot Emer. So Tzvi said, "Was Tati, I don't understand what you're saying." But Amar, Sebastian said, "Takifli Alma. The world has grabbed too strong on me. That means I came to the end. The Ini Yachel the Davim Chai. That means this. I can't even communicate with you anymore. That means the reality has hit me here. That I'm about this, and I'm at this state. I can't even speak to you well now." But he did have, and the Baal Shem Tov did have enough in him to communicate to his son the following. He did give over to his son Tzvi one holy name of Hashem, like one mystical name, like teaching. And Baal Shem Tov told his son Tzvi, have kavanah with this name, and when you do, the Tira, I say, this will give the power that I will come in vision to you, even after I pass away. And then, even after I pass away, I'll continue learning. I'll be able to learn you. So his son Amalei asked him, maybe I'll forget this special name you're telling me now. Amalei school, she's good. It's a shame. So Baal Shem Tov also told his son a certain school, a way that he could read a method that he could remember, not forget the name. So now the narrator of this story says, I forget what was the skula that the Baal Shem Tov told the Tzvi of how not to forget the name. Meaning the writer must have known, if not the name itself, but the skula, not to forget the name. But even the skula itself, the writer forgot. It reminds us this famous story of like, right, that the story of who was the Baal Shem Tov went to a special place, a wagon, and at this, and he daven and all that, and Eli Wiesel brings it down, and how each generation forgets another part of it. They forgot the place, they forgot how he got there, they forgot the actual prayer. And what you're left to is, but we forgot it all. The final generation says, but at least we still have the story, right? So same thing here. We forgot this, we don't know the name, forgot the name, we forgot even school to the name, but at least we have the story that it was given over. So this is basically the way it's described in Sheikh Baal Shem Tov, which is again the earliest version, I want to call it most authentic version of stories of the Baal Shem Tov. Then there are other if you want to call it hagiographic or other ways, stories of Baal Shem Tov. There's the famous, there's the Michal Zlatchever was there, the famous Niggin. He's saying at his past death, Niggin Yisrael Sachem Rabim. So maybe we'll end off with that Niggin, okay? And then we'll call it a night. And of course, and there was more I was going to share, of course, but it's forever. The time to go the whole night is tomorrow night. I'm going to be with some chevra. We're making a retreat, and I'm actually going to be sharing tomorrow night and have to stay up the whole night. It's from tomorrow night evening, so therefore, I don't want. I want to still. That's why I don't want to go too late tonight. So we'll just end off with Niggin, the Niggin Michal Zlatchever. And I was going to share some other Niggin too, but that we can do that another time. And then as of another teaching about Shem Tov, we don't have time to go through it deeply. My point I was going to share that the way, and maybe we'll continue in the future, is how do you avoid while you're davening or learning that an alien thought not come to your head? And this is one of the most important ways of Baal Shem Tov is to enter the letters of Baal Shem Tov. Torah Lishma, learn Torah Lishma, for his sake is not just for the sake of Torah, but the shem ha'osius, to be into the letters, that we put our psyche and even our souls into the actual letters that we see, whether it's the visual on the page of the Siddur or the Torah, what we're learning, or the auditory, whatever, and we put our fullness into the letters and the words themselves. That is the best way. That is the best way to prevent any alien thoughts to come into our heads to begin with. Okay. And there's multiple Torahs about this, how to go enter the famous Tzayhar Tasla Teva, like from the Noach's Ark, to illuminate to the Teva, not just the Ark, but the word, or boyal ateva, to go enter into the word, into the, not just art, into word, and so on and so forth. But we don't have time to go through it tonight. But just wanted to end off with that at least. And now the niggin Mechol Zlatchever, famous niggin. And it seems like this is the last niggin, and with this niggin he passed away. And the Baal Shem Tov said, whoever sings this niggin with great kavanah, then he will, at whatever level, even the lowest level he may be, the Baal Shem Tov himself personally is going to come and schlep him out, whatever it is. Rav Nachman's Chasidim are schlepped out by their pace, as the famous Petek from Yisrael Desser Chasidim. And by us, I mean by the Baal Shem Tov, his own passing is through the niggin. The following niggin. So that's it. There's another version to it, but this is the version I grew up with. And they sing it in Chabad. There's descendants of the Baal Shem Tov, out of the Yamplach and others have a slightly different version. Actually, it was already known that there's two versions, and the previous Bavitch Rebbe in 1941 mentioned that at Fabrengen that there's two versions to it. He said, but soon my son-in-law, who's escaping Nazi Germany, Europe then, he said he's going to arrive here soon to New York, and he's going to be able to teach you the two versions. And that was, I think, one of the first Fabrengens that Rebbe had. When he came to America, he taught the two versions. And there's a recording of an old chassid, Michal Dvarkin, singing from 1949, earlier than the 1940s. He passed away in 1949, sometime in the 1940s, where he sings the version we just sang. Okay, so there we are. Thank you very much. And okay, I'll take one last question or whatever I want to, and then we'll call it a night. Yes, iPhone. You're on. Mr. YZ, go ahead.
Sorry, Baruch, I want to ask a question sort of off the record, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So therefore, we're gonna sign off everyone there, as the traditional Hasidic wishes to Kabbalah Satira b'simcha b'pnimis, to receive Torah with joy and with innermost and pnimius. And the reason why we say it like this is what I'm thinking is because b'simcha is because the head, if the mountain is over our heads, we could get scared. So we say no, it should be still with joy. Could remember that Malchuse beratzin kibul aleihem. We took it with will, we loved, and we realized that even situations where it seem like we're being forced or to our so on, it's really for our own best interests, good, and therefore to be happy, and also the best way to receive Torah and absorb Torah is with joy. As we were learning from the Baal Shem Tov before, to get away from depression and fasting and self-mutilation and all that stuff. So there's this, and pnimius too, because that's the way Torah is total bittul, giving over, that goes to our very core. It's not just external, but inner. Okay, so I'm gonna sing like the goodbye song, and then we're gonna go off record, and then you could ask me, okay? Good Shabbos, good Yom Tov. Aaron, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, iPhone, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov, iPhone, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov, Jonathan, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Jonathan, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Zisha, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Zisha, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Ariel Kane, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Kane, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, Kane, good Shabbos, Yom Tov, everyone who was on earlier before, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov. And I should say Mazel Tov also. Mazel Tov, everyone in the whole world. Mazel Tov. There was a custom they would have back in Europe in Shtetl to say either before reading the Torah or after, to wish Mazel Tov, which makes sense because it's like the chuppah and the wedding. Okay, l'chaim, and don't forget to learn and also to have a real joy. And also Shavuos, the whole idea is nami lachem. They say it's supposed to be all for our physical benefit. As the Rebbe, I remember hearing the Rebbe say late the second night Shavuos outside the 770s Parkway when we came back from the great Halacha walk. Nami lachem also, it says, I said to you, Nami also for you, Nami lachem the Gematria Ketz, the end of Golus, 190. To me, this is the end of Golus, and like we know, the teaching the Baal Shem Tov is the farshbite, is the appetizer, taste of the Torah of Mashiach, which is the time to full transformation. All right.
Oh,
So,
man.
well, all right. So we're going off. Goodbye, everyone in Facebook land. Okay, Facebook.